of the Planning Commission to order. First order of business is a roll call. We know Commissioner Fickney is attempting to dial in. Commissioner Goodwin.
Present.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Here.
I'm Commissioner Olds, and I'm here. Commissioner St. Pierre.
Here.
Commissioner Bataki.
Present.
Mayor Denner.
Here.
Our next order of business would be the minutes, but I'd like to make one adjustment. Mayor, I wonder if you could take a minute and introduce our new planning commissioner.
Sure. At our last council meeting, we appointed Mike Pataki, who as a commissioner, to join us. He takes the seat formerly occupied by Commissioner Gaskins. So Commissioner Pataki, you've got some big shoes to fill, I think. I welcome you aboard. If you wanted to say anything about yourself for a few words, I think the chair would give you the floor for a minute.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for the kind words. My background, they call me a financial planning and analysis manager, which basically means I'm involved a lot with budgeting, forecasting for various projects, for various companies and various industries. So I'm very excited to get started. This being my first meeting, I'm looking forward to it, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is approval of the minutes, which you all received in your package, of the minutes of September 24th, 2020. If you have all read them, if there are any comments, I'll listen now. If not, I would have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval.
Okay. Was that a second?
I'm sorry, second.
Thank you. Let me run through our list. Commissioner Goodwin, this is for approval of the minutes.
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay?
Yes.
I'm Commissioner Olds, and I approve the minutes. Commissioner St. Pierre?
Yes.
Commissioner Bataki?
Yes.
And Mayor Denner?
Yes.
Unanimous approval. The next item, I'll turn to our city manager for the comment.
Chairman Olds, I see that Commissioner Fickney is visible, but I'm not sure if he's got audio yet. It doesn't appear that he does. Okay.
He does or doesn't?
I don't know. Commissioner Fickney, can you say something? Do you have audio yet? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Olds. So before you tonight, as part of our review process, the city went for an RFP for the city master plan. We received 8 proposals from firms. Myself and Assistant City Manager Smith ended up narrowing that down to 4 firms through a criteria process. Before you in your packet was a review of the master plan and recommendation that was sent to the city council. We then went from 8 down to 4 firms, and then they recommended that move to go to the Planning Commission. So before you tonight, we have 4 firms that will be presenting for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A follow-up from the commission members. And our first one will be MKSK. I see, however, though, I skipped public comment, so let me jump back. Public comment, Commissioner Olds, I do have one public comment for agenda items. This public comment comes from Mary Rouleau on Lake Point. I hold no certification in planning, but I did spend 6 years working on housing community development issues in Arlington, Virginia, a recognized national leader in smart growth, affordable housing, and walkable transit-oriented development. I learned a lot from experts, enough I believe to allow me to understand and evaluate the submissions for this project. In my view, MKSK is the clear choice. It demonstrates creative classification of land use, was the only firm that included a retail market study critical to our future, urges trained community ambassadors / volunteers to assist with community engagement. This is a proven and needed approach. City Hall has lost credibility in its handling of the Performance Center in terms of delivering unbiased information in a timely way. Developing a base of informed and trusted citizens will pay dividends far beyond this process. A visioning session and open houses are part of the MKSK proposal. It lists multimodal transportation as a specific task. It proposes a diverse project staff. MKSK has extensive experience in master plan development and placemaking, as do other applicants, but critically here it includes Jefferson Chalmers. The manager notes that MKSK does not demonstrate deep understanding of Grosse Pointe Park. From my viewpoint, this is another asset. We need fresh, experienced eyes. We need to be challenged. Commissioner Olds, that's my only written public comment. And now I'm going to ask Assistant Manager Smith if we have any public comment in the queue. Leah?
Thank you, City Manager Seisland. So I do have currently one public comment in the queue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the 3-minute timer. And then, Brian, you are first in my queue. I see that you have unmuted yourself. Please state your full name and your city of residency for the record. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Brian Vosberg, resident of Grosse Pointe Park. And I would just like to let the planning commissioners know, if you don't already know, that October is National Community Planning Month. So this is a great time to be having this conversation about the master plan. This is one of the most consequential things that the Planning Commission does. So this is great to see 4 qualified firms that the city is reviewing. I think there is one firm in particular that is highly qualified, and their proposal is above, in my opinion, is above all the rest. But I look forward to the interviews tonight and the commissioners making their choice, hopefully this evening, or deliberating and making a choice later on if they choose to make further deliberations. So thank you for all your work, and I look forward to watching the deliberations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, is there any other public comment?
City Manager Seisland, I have no further public comment in the queue at this time.
All right, thank you. Now we'll go back to where it was before. Leah, could you please introduce MKSK into the meeting?
I can. So from MKSK, I have Miss Anne Marie Kirby, Mr. Brad Strader, and Mr. Damon Thomas. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Miss Kirby to go ahead and share their presentation. And so just so you all know, there was not going to be a timer on the screen, but we are going to be monitoring the time. You have approximately 10 to 15 minutes for your presentation, and then questions will be after that. Thank you, and please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm Brad Strader. I'm the principal in charge of the MKSK Detroit office. I have experience in probably 35 or so master plans in Michigan and around 60 or 70 master plans and sub-area plans around the country, including those in Michigan. And I will be the principal in charge on this project. And I'm also an MEDC redevelopment ready community advisor. I actually helped put their initial training program together. And my focus now is really on multimodal transportation and safety for pedestrians and so forth. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So one of my roles in this project will be multimodal transportation. Our project manager is Anne Marie Kirby, and I'm going to let Anne Marie introduce herself and the rest of our team.
Everyone, good evening. I'm Anne Marie Kirby, and Thank you so much for this opportunity to interview with you. I'm actually previously a Grosse Pointe Woods resident. I grew up there, and right now I live in Grosse Pointe Farms. So I'm very familiar with the Grosse Pointe Park area. I actually go there quite a bit. I take my dog to the vet, to Dr. Herzog's, and I go to the beauty parlor to get my hair cut. And my husband and I like to go to the Red Crown to get a bite to eat. So one of my favorite places to go. Joining us this evening, we have Damon Thomas, and he is from Quinn Evans. They're going to be an important part of our team. They'll include assisting with engagement, target redevelopment opportunities, and then residential infill design standards. We also have Bob Gibbs from Gibbs Planning Group, and unfortunately he had another engagement tonight, so he was unable to make it to the interview, but he is a national market expert, and he has recently completed a retail market analysis for the Grosse Pointes. And then Sandra Little, Alex Fritz, and Haley Wolf are also part of our team.
So just a quick snapshot about our firm. MKSK, we're an urban design planning and landscape architecture firm with about 100 employees, and work all around the eastern US and a little bit in the western United States. And we have experts in a lot of areas of design, transportation planning, community redevelopment, walkable communities, parks, plaza design, right-of-way design. And we all, as I mentioned, we're one of the trainers and advisors to the MEDC's Redevelopment Ready Community Program, which I know is a key part of this to make sure we align with their goals. Also on the team, as Anne Marie mentioned, we have architects and urban designers from Quinn Evans. Quinn Evans actually is on the same floor of our building in Midtown Detroit. And Quinn Evans specializes in historic preservation and commercial revitalization and residential infill and community engagement. And they are currently working with the Grosse Pointe Library System, including the Ewald branch in Grosse Pointe Park. And then the third member of our team is Bob Gibbs from Gibbs Planning, who's up sailing in Lake Charlevoix this week. He was going to join us when the interview was going to be scheduled earlier. But you saw a lot of information on Bob in the proposal, but Bob is one of the national experts on markets for retailers and restaurants. He does a lot of training and webinars for Harvard and other places. He's a real asset around the nation, but he's actually based in Birmingham, Michigan. And so we work with Bob on a lot of projects. We work with Quinn Evans on a lot of projects, and all of us have a shared philosophy that visuals are very important and a focus on implementation is very important and getting the community involved. So that's kind of a little bit of background on our three firms. And as I mentioned, we've all worked around the country and around Michigan on some great communities. Our emphasis is on placemaking. These photos just show some of the many places we've worked in Michigan and in other states. So what are the keys to success? I've worked on a lot of master plans. Anne Marie's worked on a lot of master plans, and maybe a little bit contrary to the city manager, Anne Marie grew up in Grosse Pointe. Her family goes back 3 generations. So I think we're very familiar with the Grosse Pointe and Metro Detroit area. And we know from our experience in the master plan, one key to success is collaboration with you. We really need to understand your perspective of things, work with the community. So that's important. We know it's important that a plan be concise. Some master plans, especially old style ones, are filled with data and maps and very dry and nobody really wants to read. And this plan needs to be crisp, get right to the point, have ideas in the plan, have support, have good visuals, be something that is a how-to manual for the next 10 to 15 years. In this plan, we really want to focus on key areas. We outlined in our proposal sort of the idea of what areas of the city are in pretty good shape and just conserve, and how do we make sure that happens? What are areas that just need some enhancement, whether it be a park or a neighborhood or a site? And where are some areas where we need to really focus on reinvestment? Might be those commercial corridors or the edges of those corridors or other places. So conserve, enhance, invest. That's kind of our layering in. We will align with the redevelopment ready principles. We helped write some of the redevelopment ready principles. And also we want to make sure it's an implementable plan. Your new planning commission member, who is a financial planner, we believe in financial planning as part of the master plan. So we really need to look at what are the projects, what's the timing, what are the resources to pay for that, so that the visions and ideas in the plan are things that can actually be implemented. So that's kind of an overview of what we think are keys to success. Anne Marie's going to walk you through the work plan.
Thanks, Brad. So we'd like to give you a quick snapshot of our work plan and our schedule. The project kickoff meeting would set the framework for the planning process, and this is where we want to discuss the details of the past plans and your current draft plan. And then also look at data, discuss and decide on engagement techniques and logistics, and then also confirm the proposed work plan and then make any necessary refinements. This is also an opportunity for our team to do a citywide tour. This tour would allow us to do observations of the business districts, the residential neighborhoods, and then also community amenities, and then start noting any potential opportunities. Our project framework task focuses on data and information gathering. This is where we're going to build off our initial observations, and then we're going to look at existing city policies and codes, update the demographic information that's in the draft plan, and then prepare a plan outline showing what kinds of things that we'll be retaining, refreshing, and replacing. And then a future land use map and zoning plan would be integrated into the plan. This is a really important element for a comprehensive plan. It's going to be the key guiding tools for you as you move through implementation. And a future land use map would include goals for targeted areas for certain sites in the city. This section would include options and recommendations for your residential neighborhoods, your business districts, and your recreational amenities. And then our transportation planning specialists, we're going to craft a phased plan of transportation improvements to ensure that there's safer roads, safer multimodal opportunities, and better connectivity and walkability throughout the city. And as we mentioned before, the Gibbs planning group had already completed a retail market analysis. This was done for the Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce. I would build off of that previous work and for each of the business districts in the city and prepare a retail market study to provide a general understanding of the amounts of types of retail development that are supportable today. And then he would also provide a best practice session for downtown retailers and city officials. So now I want to talk about engagement. This is a really important part of our approach. We believe that early engagement means we're really listening to you guys and the community as we take you through the process and we start to get an idea of what important issues there are and what needs to be addressed. So initial engagement will include an online resident survey, and we're going to have questions about residential areas, business districts, amenities, and then start to gauge your overall priorities. And then we would have a visioning session, and this would include best practice presentation that would be followed by an interactive session where we would start mapping out those opportunities. And then to encourage broader outreach to the community, we would identify and inform community ambassadors with city officials and city administration. So they would help us identify who those people would be. We would provide the materials and training to do outreach in smaller meeting formats through our public workshop in a box. So that allows people to have smaller focus groups and then report back to us, and we would integrate that into the plan. And then in light of the COVID era that we're in, we want to be flexible to carry out virtual engagement. So things like Zoom meetings, SurveyMonkey, or some sort of hybrid of virtual and in-person events so that everyone kind of feels comfortable interacting and participating in this planning effort. Now I'm going to turn it over to Damon, and he's going to talk about the key parts that Quinn Evans is going to be working on.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Damon Thomas with Quinn Evans. I'll be assisting MKSK on targeting redevelopment areas based on the market analysis and evaluation we'll be doing. Documenting areas that are expected to remain the same as well as those that may need enhancement, and that'll be both for residential and commercial spaces or areas. I'll be doing an evaluation of neighborhood amenities, so that will include things like your parks, your schools, and any other assets that you have in your community. There will be a targeted assessment of commercial buildings for preservation, rehab, and development considerations. And I'll also be taking a look at residential infill design standards. So when we're looking at any possible residential infills, we'll be trying to make sure that it fits the context of the neighborhood. So a similar project that I worked on was the Sinai Grace Strategic Framework Plan. This project served as a guide to help improve and connect 8 neighborhoods around Sinai Grace Hospital in Northwest Detroit. And another goal of that project was to activate and revitalize the area's commercial corridors. And through our research and community engagement, this all helped us to target and prioritize areas of concern and opportunities for both the residents and businesses. So I'll be bringing this experience, ideas, and the lessons learned to this project.
Great, thanks, Damon. So overall, we envision this process to take about a year. And the last few months of this effort, we would prepare that draft plan and action plan for review by city administration officials in the community. And then after we get your feedback, we would incorporate that into the master plan and then take you through the review and adoption process.
So that's the wrap up. I think we used about 12 minutes here. So it's going through things, I know, at a pretty fast pace. I hope you had a chance to look through our proposal and some of our previous work. We would really love to work with you. We think that this is the type of project that we as a team like to go after. It's urban. It's got some interesting diversity to it in terms of the types of work and transportation and redevelopment and residential. So we'd be very excited to work with you on any of these projects. When you get a request for a proposal, you take a shot at sort of outlining what you think of the approach and where to focus the attention. But part of our process we didn't really mention is to sit down with you at the beginning. We have a very long list of a kickoff meeting agenda, pretty much a full day of touring the community, asking questions, getting familiar with the past work that was done. So we really have a clear understanding, agreement on what the deliverables are going to be and the process and who to involve and so forth. So a much more detailed discussion of the scope before we get started. So I just wanted to mention that. And with that, turn it back to the chairman and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. What I'd like to do for the questioning period is I'd like to start out and ask each commissioner if they have any questions. We'll do it in basically our roll call order, but I'd like to start out by asking the city manager, has Mr. Fickney been able to join us?
Yes, he has been able to join us, but I'm not sure audio-wise. We could test right now if Mr. Fickney is available. Mike, can you hear us and can you say something? Looks like the audio is still not working, Chairman Olds.
Thank you. Well, what we'll do is we'll move down the line for comments. Commissioner Goodwin, questions or comments?
Thank you. And thank you to MKSK for submitting a proposal to us. My question just centers around the fact that you acknowledge that Grosse Pointe Park, like many of the other cities that you've conducted master plans in, is a mature city, and wondered if there were if there's anything in the technique and the process that you would bring to the table that you have seen turn out very beneficial for the eventual work product and deliverable through your process.
I think maybe I'll start with that, and then if Henry or Damon want to answer. I think part of this is this sort of approach of our conserve and enhance and invest. And so then recognizing that those are different strategies and recommendations for different parts of the city, like your even you have 4 business districts, they're all different. And so the recommendations can't just be generic recommendations for all 4. They need to be, there may be some things that are common to all 4, but they're going to be specific recommendations for each one. And I think another distinction is we probably need to focus on a few sites that might be blocks or might be a particular site or piece of property. I think another thing with mature communities is it was even in sort of the draft master plan, well, the transportation system is already defined, but it really isn't. The transportation system has ability to transform to be more multimodal, more walkable, more bikeable. We've got to look at the future mobility of transportation. So, everything in the city is subject to change. When people look back on their lives, they realize they had a lot of change. When they look to the future, they think, oh, we want things to stay the same. And some of your residents may feel that way, but you can't just sit back And in a mature community, you have to convince people that there is going to be change, and we need to make sure that change is consistent with the character of the community, and we've prepared for it instead of reacting to it.
Thank you.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chairman Olds. I do want to say first, I did not realize, because it wasn't in the printed information, that you had worked on plans in Naples, Florida. My in-laws live there, so I'm very familiar with that community. I aspire to live there someday. And I also lived in Arlington for several years, so I'm very familiar with Old Town Alexandria. So those are two examples of revitalized, I would say, Main Street type corridors. So looking at Grosse Pointe Park, I was interested in particular to hear a little bit more about how you would do a retail analysis, because we have these three very different but small pockets of retail areas. And in the last decade, I've certainly seen that there are anchors in those corridors, but there's also been you know, businesses that have opened and closed without much thought to, are they needed? Are they, you know, is this going to meet the needs of the community, especially now as we have an aging population here in Grosse Pointe Park? How can we provide retail to suit their needs? And we also are trying to draw in new families. So if you could just go into a little bit more about how that retail analysis would be done for our community in particular, I would love to hear about that.
Sure, and I guess maybe this is one I'll take too. Speaking for Bob Gibbs, and Bob would give, I'm sure, a much more in-depth answer, but maybe I can give a shorter one. And Bob did the work in Arlington and Naples and so forth. So those are a couple of his project examples. So as Anne Marie mentioned, Bob did a retail market analysis for the Grosse Pointe communities on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. So on this one, we just thought it would be great for him to drill down a little deeper into the distinctions of the 4 different commercial districts and give different strategies for each one. So we include with Bob giving a forum on best practices as part of our visioning and best practice forum on some things that retailers can be doing and changes in the retailing, and especially this year with COVID, and some tips for how retail can survive and thrive in the future. And in talking to Bob, he really thinks that each district, I tried to say this earlier, but each district it's got to find its niche. There has to be, it could be the restaurants, but there's got to be a niche. You don't want all of them to look the same. So there's got to be some diversity and distinction in each one. So his market analysis will look at what's supportable in Grosse Pointe Park and in the market area, but then he'll look at the existing businesses and identify what are good companion businesses or types of uses that would help keep those areas vital in the future. And his background is in landscape architecture. So he'll also work with our design team to say what needs to be done. And some of those streetscapes are looking a little tired out there. It's kind of hard for pedestrians to cross the street, and he believes a highly walkable location is really critical. You talked about Naples and Arlington, that's the case there. And I think we can do some things to make the commercial districts much more walkable instead of just a drive-through district.
Great, thank you very much. That was my only question, Chairman Olds.
Thank you. I am next in line here, and I have a question regarding your ambassador program. I understand that you provide training for the ambassadors that are selected, and you give them something called a public workshop in a box as part of that program, I believe. And then they go out into the community asking questions and providing information. My question is, as they initially go out into the community, do you provide backup for them on their first or second meeting in a community session, monitoring how they're doing or facilitating them?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So the purpose of this meeting in the box is to really make sure that, you know, people can go out and talk to their friends and their neighbors about what's going on and what their neighbors' priorities are in the community. And certainly throughout this process, we would be monitoring that effort. So we would provide the training, all the materials, and help organize, when those meetings would take place, and to really ensure that they have successful meetings and bring back that feedback that we're looking for. Materials would include, maps, interactive maps that people can place dots on, and start to map out, what those areas of opportunity are, where the issues might be, and I think I would be overseeing that whole process, so people could report back to me if they have questions throughout the process. And I think if necessary, we would attend a meeting with the facilitators to make sure that things are going smoothly. And as Brad mentioned before, with COVID, we would have to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. So having the options to also do online engagement too throughout the meetings in the box.
Okay. Does the meeting in the box training include role playing? Is that what you're saying? So they don't need to be monitored or facilitated in their initial meetings?
Yeah, the goal is that they'll be able to go out on their own, and whether it's one or two people facilitating a meeting together, so that they can kind of piggyback and make sure that meeting is going well. But yeah, that would be the goal, is we would take them through an online training or in-person training, depending on what's going on with our current climate with COVID, but we would definitely make sure that they're prepared going into those meetings in the box.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner St-Pierre?
Hi, thank you. So kind of to follow up with what Michelle said, I'm actually in Traverse City right now for work. And so I did get to drive through downtown Traverse City this afternoon and evening and probably see a lot of stuff you were working on and see how it's even been adapted for, current social distancing and COVID. They've just reopened Front Street, so that's not closed off anymore. But good coincidence to get to see that this afternoon. So just a couple questions on my end. I did notice that you included some additional potential studies or master plans that we could do as part of this and integrate it into it. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about what you think the benefits are to do the Parks and Recreation master plan, and as well as a parking study while we're going through the overall master planning process.
Do you want me to start that one, Anne Marie? For the additional services, so we didn't know if you need one of those or not, and you have, I think, a recreation commission. So those topics will be touched on lightly in the master plan, and we just wanted to make sure you were aware that we're available to do a deeper dive, I guess, if you want to call it, on those. In Traverse City, we did the downtown parking study for Traverse City and figured out strategies for parking. And we saw on the previous surveys and master plan work that parking was one of the topics that came up a lot. So we do a lot of parking studies, downtown Birmingham, downtown Kalamazoo, Monroe, downtown Detroit. We've been involved in a lot of parking studies and parking strategies. Parking is really changing a lot. Curbside management is kind of the new term. So we'll touch on best practices and ideas for the commercial districts. And if there's a feeling that parking is really an issue in one of them, if it comes out of our planning process, we want you to be aware that we can do a more detailed study of turnover. Bob Gibbs will give a number, something like $300,000 is the value of each space if it turns over 10 times a day. But if it's only used 2 times a day by an employee or the business owner, or there's nothing going on, then you're getting no benefit out of the on-street parking. So we'll have some general policies and ideas and best practices in the plan, and we can go further. Same thing with the Parks and Recreation. We have a lot of landscape architects at MKSK, and we would do a quick look at all the parks, offer some suggestions. And then if you want to do an MDNR kind of certified Parks and Recreation master plan that has to be done in a different format, we would be available to do that as well if needed.
Great, thanks for going into a little more. I think some of those would be really important to do kind of concurrently with the master plan, especially on the parking side. I think, as Commissioner Goodwin said, we're a very mature city. It's very dense. We're never going to get more space to park, so we need to figure out the best way to use what we have. and also continue to encourage that development. So I do think it's something that we, need to think about, and I was glad to see that in your proposal. You talk about extensive community engagement and involving people from young to old in the process, which I think is fantastic. What are your methods for recruiting those volunteers and making sure that we are getting the diversity in ages and geography, even within Grosse Pointe Park, racial diversity? How do you go through that process?
So I think we would definitely rely on the city administration and city officials in part to help us figure out, where those populations are in Grosse Pointe Park. And I definitely think social media blasts would help with that. We can certainly help with creating flyers to get people interested. We are really great with our graphics. We have a great team to do design and graphics and draw people's attention in. We always find that, if you send something like that out, people might, get interested in helping out their community. So I think certainly starting with talking with the city first during that kickoff meeting is a good plan to figure out how to engage those people and maybe, using your contacts and determining who you think those people should be. And we definitely would want to make sure there is diversity, whether it's, age and race, so that, those people can then connect to their contacts so that we have a system of, hey, my friends want to be involved with this plan, who from that group can be selected to be a community ambassador, and then they can be community ambassadors throughout the process, so we can continue to get that great feedback that we'd be looking for.
No, absolutely. How many, in a community this size, how many ambassadors would you anticipate having, or needing rather?
I don't know that we've determined that quite yet, and I definitely think that's a conversation we would have during the kickoff meeting to figure out what you guys would be comfortable with. I think, at most we would probably see no more than, 15 or 20 people. That it would be hard beyond that to manage that many facilitators of the meetings. So that's probably the top numbers that we would see. We want to make sure that from different, we get people from different neighborhoods too. So I think keeping track of, where those people are, and so they can kind of have meetings within their own neighborhoods, and certainly draw from the businesses to make sure that each business district has a community ambassador.
Great, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bataki.
Yes, just to sort of piggyback off of some of the questions about the ambassador program. What's sort of the fallback if you find that you don't get the requisite number, or it's not the proper level of representation? Is there some other methodology that you use?
Yeah, so certainly, I can see, there might be initially, sometimes in these processes, people are hesitant to step up and participate. So I think as we work with you, we want to make sure people get excited about the process, and that starts with, putting information on your website and making sure there's a whole web page dedicated to this master plan process. Maybe inviting people. It's hard now with COVID because, you normally would just say, hey, let's have like some kind of pizza event, get people started to be interested in this topic. But, certainly the other ways that we would see participation is definitely through our surveys and our visioning session. And again, we would definitely work with you to make sure that we have enough community ambassadors to have those at least initial meetings so that we get that feedback that we're looking for to help guide the direction of the plan.
Okay. Can you cite any other examples where I saw in the proposal that you had worked with Quinn Evans a lot, but do you have examples where you worked with Gibbs and Quinn Evans on the same project?
We have not worked with Gibbs and Quinn Evans, I don't think, on the same project. So we work with Gibbs often on a lot of downtown projects. We work with Quinn Evans more on our Detroit-based projects. So we've worked with Bob in Monroe and Kalamazoo and for years with Bob on different things in Birmingham. and usually the projects with Bob have not needed an architect, an urban design, or we would do it ourselves. So we brought Quinn Evans in because of the specifics of this project. So I don't know, Damon, I don't think Quinn Evans has probably worked with Bob Gibbs, but I'm not certain of that.
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. And then one other question, I think on the public engagement slide, you mentioned the survey, the visioning, and the ambassadors. Are there going to be, can you go into detail on any other sorts of outreach that you're doing, like the public forums or anything like that?
Yeah, in total, we would have 6 meetings that we'd be looking at. And some of those meetings are at the end of the process. So when we're taking it through the adoption process, that counts as, we'd have a final workshop with Planning Commission and the public, and then we would take it to City Council. But the other meetings we would be looking at includes that community visioning session. And that's really going to be the important part of our process to get people to understand what the current conditions are of the city, and then start to map out what those opportunities are. And Brad had talked about our conserve, enhance, and invest areas. So that's what we would be mapping out at that particular meeting. And then Bob would also be doing his best practice session with retailers and city officials during that meeting too.
We find the retailers, when they find out Bob Gibbs is speaking, we don't have trouble getting retailers out. They kind of rush to hear him speak. The workshop in a box or the meeting in a box we thought would be a good COVID alternative because it's small groups and people would know each other and so forth. But if we don't need that, or our alternative would be more typical open houses and workshops, we do meetings in a park. It all kind of depends on the time of year and the COVID situation. So we're very, I think, adept at a lot of different techniques for engagement. And we were trying to come up with a good engagement given the characteristics of Grosse Pointe Park and the COVID. And if the COVID is not a hindrance, like in the spring of next year, then we can go to more traditional open house meetings and other things. So.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mayor Denner.
Hey, I had to unmute, sorry. I had a couple of things. You've already addressed actually most of my questions, but I'm picking up on a couple of themes that have already come up. The 3 firms that will work together on this each bring particular expertise and are impressive in their own right. Can you describe a little bit how you integrate these professionals from different firms into a final result who come from not only different expertises, but most firms have their own approaches and culture that would need to mesh for this to be a good product. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll start, Anne-Marie, and you can add. I think one of the reasons we like teaming with Quinn Evans and Gibbs is we have shared philosophies and we really like each other. So Sandra is another person with Quinn Evans. We've worked with her in Hamtramck and Highland Park. We're doing the Woodward Mobility Oriented Development Project now, and Quinn Evans is working with Highland Park and engaging. So we just more like each other as people, and we work well together. Bob Gibbs has told us he wants MKSK to be his landscape architect. He's brought us into other projects. We brought him into other projects. So I think the collaboration is really good. The background is good. We respect the kind of the purview of each other. So I think we have a really good working relationship. We're not, even though the 3 haven't worked together as a combination of one, we've worked together on a lot of different projects. And the individuals from the firms that you'll be working with, because it's really a small group of people that you'll be working with, we've all worked together.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. Grosse Pointe Park has, and you commented a little bit on this, have a number of existing citizen populated organizations. You mentioned our Parks, our Recreation Commission. We also have Beautification Commission. The Jefferson Corridor has a Downtown Development Authority Board, and the first 4 streets of our city, including the rest of the commercial districts, are included in our TIFA district. Can you talk a little bit about the interface that those groups of citizens and residents might have with this process.
Yeah, certainly I can take this one. So yeah, I think those are definitely key groups that we would want to involve in this process and to target, whether it's for the public workshops in a box or throughout the planning process to get their feedback and to get their input. Certainly one of our themes throughout our proposal is talking about your business districts. So we want to make sure that those areas and areas around there are targeted for this plan, and we're getting feedback from those stakeholders. So we would definitely work with you to identify all those groups and make sure they're included.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Leah, could you handle the transfer from one group to another for us?
If I can just, Mr. Chairman, before you let us go, since we're first, there may be questions that come up of the other firms later. You think I wish I would have asked MKSK, and if that happens, just through Leah, maybe reach out to Anne Marie or any of us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have that you didn't get a chance to ask.
Thanks.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, can we admit McKenna into the meeting, please?
I can. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to thank MKSK again. I'm actually going to remove you from the meeting. And then, okay. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, it takes me a little bit. Okay, so our next firm is going to be McKenna. So I have, joining from McKenna is Mr. Paul Lippens, Mr. Adam Cook, Mr. John Jackson, Miss Sarah Traxler, Miss Julie Konecki, and Mr. Brian Kesey. So what I'm going to ask all of you to do, who I just added, thank you, I can see you popping up on my screen. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And then what I will do is, I know that Sarah is going to be handling your screen sharing. So Sarah, if you would like to go ahead and share your screen and introduce your firm, we are happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. We are very pleased to present to you for your master plan project. And John Jackson, the president of our firm, will actually start us off.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for inviting us here tonight. Our team is very excited to be here. We understand that the city of Grosse Pointe Park is very special. Having grown up in the Grosse Pointe, I understand a little bit about what makes Grosse Pointe Park special. And, you hear a lot about how Grosse Pointe Park ranks consistently as one of the best places to live in Michigan as well as in the United States. But I think what makes it special is that it's truly an authentic community. The people are engaged. The people care about what's going on in the city. They're vocal, they participate. And that's the kind of environment that we really enjoy working in. So I'm gonna give you an overview of our presentation tonight. Basically, we're gonna spend a little bit of time on who we are. We're gonna talk about our master plan approach summary, as well as trying to express some of the value that we believe that we bring to the process and to the city. And then, of course, we're going to leave time for you to ask questions, which we believe is an important part of this presentation tonight. So we really brought out the A-team for this project. Sarah Traxler will be the project manager. Her specialization is in public engagement, as well as a number of other master planning procedures. She's very familiar with the RRC best practices and how to implement master plans. So as a project manager, I think she brings a lot of skills to the table. Julie Konecki brings with her skills with respect to urban design, which again, I think will serve the city of Grosse Pointe Park extremely well. Adam Cook, who we have on the team to help us dig down into the demographics, understand the history and the existing conditions of really what makes Grosse Pointe Park tick, how it's evolved organically over the years. So we believe that that brings a special dimension to our team. Paul Lippens, Vice President, who specializes in mobility, transportation, and urban design, again, brings that added dimension of how people get around in the city of Grosse Pointe Park, as well as the region. So that's an important part of this process, we believe, as well. And Brian Kesey is on our team, specializing in GIS mapping, as well as how to display complex data visually in the form of maps to help communicate those complex characteristics of the community. So again, personally, having grown up in the Grosse Pointes, I have a personal understanding of the area, but more importantly, having been able to work in this area professionally and understand the different cultures that exist out here, I think, again, makes our team unique. We've done a lot of work in Grosse Pointe Farms, and Grosse Pointe Woods in terms of master planning, park and recreation planning, parking studies, zoning text amendments, and spending a lot of time in front of the public, engaging the public and understanding what's important to them as we move forward with a lot of those complex projects. Harper Woods, the Eastside Community Network are also other entities and organizations that we've had the privilege to work for on complex projects. And we're just coming off a project that we were excited about, the Mack Avenue Improvement Plan, working with the City of Grosse Pointe, Grosse Pointe Farms, as well as the City of Detroit, and building on the process that Grosse Pointe Park put into place with first phase of the Mack Avenue Improvement Plan. So again, we're in a situation of building on a lot of the effort that the City of Grosse Pointe Park has done in the past, as well as other efforts that have gone on in this area. And I think we also bring with us the work that we've done around the state and around the Midwest as well in terms of best practices for planning and implementing master plans. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Traxler, who's going to give you a summary of our master plan approach. Sarah?
Great. Thank you, John. We thought with our presentation tonight, rather than simply summarizing and synthesizing the information that we have in terms of our project scope, that we would provide you with a peek behind the curtains, kind of laying a foundation for the types of concepts that planners and designers bring to a master planning process. So on page 9 of the proposal that we've submitted, you, I'm sure, noticed that we have a succinct and detailed project plan chart that describes how we'll work with the steering committee and the city administration, how many meetings we'll have with planning commission and city council, the scope inclusions in our proposal, and then also the details on our public engagement. But tonight we wanted to really dive a little bit deeper into some of the lenses through which we prepare your plan. First of which, and perhaps most importantly, being public engagement. So Julie's going to walk you through some of our most recent experience and how we've adapted to today's time.
Thank you, Sarah. Public engagement is absolutely fundamental. Building public confidence and consensus around shared values and goals sets the agenda for you as decision makers about every planning decision that flows from it. So our proposal outlined what we think are proven methods for delivering meaningful public engagement. But as we've all learned, especially this year, we need to always be adapting, especially in today's reality. So we've been really successful with this over the last few months, pivoting to new technologies and really expanding our toolbox of public engagement tools. I just wanted to highlight a few that we've had that I have been project manager on in this past summer. So at the top there, you can see a tool called an ideas wall. This is something we use for Mack Avenue to push out a bunch of additional kind of initial recommendations. And what this tool allowed us to do was have interactive public engagement in lieu of having an in-person charrette. So people could upvote or downvote, they could comment, they could like and reply to each other's comments, and it provided a little bit better of a visual interface for this activity. At the bottom, this was a hybrid approach that we used. We had a socially distant outdoor event at their farmers market, capturing people that walked by. So we were able to do everything in kind of open air. But for those that didn't want to participate, we used a tool called Conveyo, and people picked up flyers and were able to scan a QR code that took them right to the same boards online, and then we were able to collate everything together. So delivering excellent public engagement really comes down to a few things. First and foremost, it's knowing your audience and how best to reach them. We do this by having strong partnerships with the client communities we work with and setting a strong framework for communications and marketing, as well as how best to meet people where they are with our activities. It's about choosing the right tools and methods based on what you hope to learn, not necessarily the most innovative. And then making it easy and fun to get involved. You know, not everybody is a planning nerd. We want to put things in simple terms so that people understand how decisions impact their everyday lives. And we also want to make sure we have activities for all ages and abilities. And finally, you know, it's about putting in the hard work. Public engagement, I would love to say it's as easy as putting something online and you have fantastic broad range, wide engagement, but it's not that simple. It's about focused, consistent interface with the public and feedback from the public to the consultant to the client, so everybody understands what we're hearing and how it's going to directly inform the plan. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Sarah for a discussion of our data analysis approach.
Yeah, we really just wanted to impart on you that we don't view public engagement as a chore, but rather as really important hard work that takes time and follow through. We also wanted to convey to you that we approach our master planning efforts from a data-driven perspective. We want to assure you that we'll be using all known, readily available tools. And perhaps as an important point to make during this interview, one of the very first things that we will be doing a deep dive into is the master plan that was drafted over the last year and a half or so by your planning commission and steering committee, using that as the foundation for how we organize our data gathering and how we organize the plan. We have spatial expertise. We'll pull flood zone data to study and project lakefront concerns perhaps. And also just want to assure you that when the US Census data comes out in the spring, we will use that to kind of verify, confirm, challenge, or backfill other sources that we have been building in terms of the progress that we've made up to that point in the plan. On the slide, you see infographics from a recent plan that Adam and I have managed and prepared, the Hazel Park Master Plan, and this is using Esri source and our graphic design to make these infographics. Adam's going to talk about our passion for documenting communities' history as part of a master planning process.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. An important part of this process is going through and doing not just the qualitative, or I should say the quantitative things that one would associate with the master plan, such as inventorying the land use, inventorying the transportation facilities, parks and recreation facilities. We also need to hit on the qualitative aspects of the community. What makes Grosse Pointe Park the special, unique place that it is? What makes it a magical place? And when we do that, we think about the master plan as sort of a spot on the timeline. We're telling the story of Grosse Pointe Park up to the present point in time, and then sourcing a vision for how to bring it into the future, into the next generation. And so one of the things we do, and we look at very closely in our methodology, right, is taking a look at your community's history, understanding why things are the way they are. So for a brief example, we've got up here on the slide an old subdivision plat for the Windmill Point subdivision. This was really the first sort of southward expansion of Grosse Pointe Park down toward the riverfront. And it occurred at a really crucial time in the community's history. You can look and see that there are sort of three eras that define Grosse Pointe Park and define three different sort of characters of the built form in Grosse Pointe Park. Sort of the early character when it was the village of Fairview, which was the eastward expansion of the growing city of Detroit, and then Fairview became an independent village sort of prior to 1907, around the turn of the 20th century. If you want to think about Beaconsfield Street, the look and feel of that street has, roughly 35 by 125 foot lots, very cozy houses with short setbacks. As Grosse Pointe Park grew, expanded eastward from about 1907 to 1935. Now you're looking at the development of some of the buildings along your commercial corridors, like Jefferson and Kercheval. You're looking at slightly larger lots, 100 foot by 200 feet. Think about Devonshire Street. Think about the setbacks, roughly 60-foot setbacks on that street, the different look and feel of that street compared to Beaconsfield. And then lastly, when we think about Windmill Point, and that's the sort of garden suburb aesthetic. When we get down to the riverfront, we have the iconic estates with their iconic architecture, the more winding street patterns. That's yet another context. But all of those three things are put together in just about 2 square miles. And to have a community with all of those different things operating at the same time, it makes a magical place. We want to expand upon that. We really need to get to the bottom of all of the little ingredients to make those things happen so that we can help move forward with a vision. And I'm going to kick it back to Sarah at this point to talk about neighborhoods, nodes, and corridors.
Which are our tried and true, tested, and favorite building blocks for how we set the foundation for your master plan. McKenna's recent master plans, I would say over the last 2 years or so, have really approached a planning perspective that features existing land use and existing conditions documentation using this framework of neighborhoods, nodes, and corridors, and then pulling that forward to our goals and objectives, future land use plan, and prioritization and implementation, saying, how do you pull out the recommendations for each of these building blocks into a program that makes sense for the city to continue to thrive? Here you see examples of graphics from our plan for the city of Birmingham, which we're currently undertaking, from the Graft Mack Avenue improvement plan that Julie's managing with that coalition of partners, and then also Adams and my city of Hazel Park master plan. Finally, we wanted to note some imperatives that are just critical for us to address in your master plan. Redevelopment Ready Communities is a state program that we understand you may wish to become certified in. So please just know that your plan will comply with that program. Urbanism is the traditional character upon which your community was built. We need to document what must be preserved so that you don't lose that flexibility and really truly strong character that allows you to pivot, if you will, to use the word of the day, pivot in a way that some of your neighbors can't. For example, Harper Woods with the Eastland Center. At the time, they probably thought that they won the jackpot, and now they're kind of forced to confront the reality of how you reuse a 1 million square foot mall. On the other hand, Grosse Pointe Park has these buildings that are in an urban and traditional environment that can be reused and aren't just single use. So we need to define what that means. Finally, lessons we've learned during COVID. Next time something like this happens, it may not be a pandemic, it may be some type of other emergency. We need to responsibly document how you can be flexible within a important and perhaps rigid framework of being able to make decisions that are based on good planning principles. Finally, we want to appeal to you that we believe that we have proposed the right-sized approach for your master plan. It will be a comprehensive foundation that checks all the boxes in terms of requirements of the state. It'll be a reaffirmation of the legal basis of zoning, which is very important for your master plan. And it'll be that playbook that you have been needing and wanting for the next generation of planning. can serve as a foundation for additional studies that we may recommend in the implementation program. And we just want to, point out that the reason we proposed the scope we did at the price we did is because we believe that you will see this as a springboard for the next handful of plans, efforts, capital improvement projects, and so on and so forth. So it being, a plan that has not been adopted recently in an updated form, we thought that you might want to start a little bit smaller scale and use that as the foundation for the next effort. So we know that we've spoken for 15 minutes and want to turn it over to questions and answers. Earnestly, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I think I'll go through our commission for questions. Let's reverse the order and start out with Mayor Denner.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Olds. I had one question, kind of building on the last statement that Sarah made about how you decided on the scope and focus and the proposal, the way that it's structured. And the question is this: if you were to recommend to us that we expanded the scope in some way to add something to the planning process that we didn't include in the current scope, or you didn't include in your scope based on our RFP, what would it be, if anything?
Great. Well, I'll just handle this, and I think John's going to kind of quarterback the rest of the questions, but it's something I spent a lot of time thinking about and anticipated this question. So we understand that there is perhaps desire to further study and create, again, a playbook for your parks and recreation assets. But we believe that it would be a very natural and honestly efficient process to add to our master plan. We can add Parks and Rec very specifically to the public engagement that we're conducting for the master plan. And I mentioned the City of Hazel Park master plan that Adam and I worked on. What I didn't mention is that that was a contract for their Parks and Recreation master plan and master plan at the same time. So we did the public engagement throughout the whole process and used all of the data and kind of existing conditions work for both of those plans. We also would love to be authorized and sort of unleashed on doing a deeper dive on some of your key sites, nodes, corridors, and prepare more detailed development concepts, dive deeper during public engagement for those sites, and give you kind of a little bit closer to the finish line playbook for how you expect private entities or public entities, in the case of Humbly Elementary, for example, and how they should use the master plan to understand how you expect those sites to be developed. So detailed development concepts for these sites, which we do in partnership with the state, the MEDC, and also with our clients. I do want to note that right now we're working with the Grosse Pointe School District in Harper Woods, our client, on Popard's redevelopment. Adam and I are leading that effort, and we're going through a public engagement process and defining in concert with the state's expectations how that site should be redeveloped, and hoping that we're able to leverage additional resources and kind of a community-based approach on how that turns over. So those were our preliminary ideas on how we would like to spend more of your money.
Commissioner Bataki?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Going back to one of the earlier slides where you referenced the City of Grosse Pointe master plan in 2004 and 2012. Do you recall how long that master development process took for Grosse Pointe?
Sure. I can answer that. I had the privilege of working on both those master plan updates, and I believe they ranged from about, I think the 2004 plan was probably about 9 to 12 months, maybe. I think the 2012 plan was pretty close to that too. The 2012 plan was really an update. The 2004 plan was really, a deep dive into the future of the city of Grosse Pointe because of what was happening at Jacobson's and the future of the village and so forth. So that was really an overhaul, and 2012 was really an update. But both of those were required to follow the state mandated process, which right off the bat adds, 63-day review process. So I think they were both in the 9 to 12 month range.
Okay. And apart from yourself, was there any other overlap between the people who worked on those plans and the people you're going to have on your team here?
I'm the only surviving planner that had the privilege of working on that project at that time.
Okay. All right. And then just a couple of questions. In the proposal, in terms of the public outreach, you mentioned there'd be a day for roundtable, a day for drop-in, open house, et cetera. But by a day, can I take that to mean 8 hours of work?
Sarah, you want to answer that one? I want to make sure we get that right.
Yeah, there's honestly room for expansion of that 8 hours. It's sort of an easy way for us to convey an average effort. So we are not at a point where we've scoped out this budget down to, needing to use 3 or 4 hours or not use 3 or 4 hours. So where we've conveyed daytime and evening activities, that means that we sort of envisioned kind of starting something and ending something during the day and being available to people who might prefer to interact during the day, and then starting and ending something during the evening to be available to people who are more available in the evening. So there's a lot of room for adjustment. And the reason we wanted to kind of present the more recent tools that we've been using is to suggest that we kind of expect that the city manager's team and the steering committee might want to make adjustments to what we've proposed. So, I don't expect that if we are your chosen partner, that we will necessarily be sticking to exactly that menu of public engagement, because we are sort of in this different environment and prolonged. So when we wrote it, even just a few months ago, we thought and hoped maybe we'd be able to be more in person. But that's all to say that we can really get more detailed once we're on board and meet your expectations.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner St. Pierre.
Thank you. Just a couple questions from me as well. You've obviously listed out your planned engagement. You've listed out possibilities for additional public engagement just based on where we are with COVID and whatnot. But how are you going to ensure that, in a community like Grosse Pointe Park, where, while we are, geographically small, we're very dense, and we have a wide range of types of residents and ages and diversity, how are you going to ensure that we capture all of that in the public engagement as you planned it out?
I'm going to turn that over to our public engagement specialist, Sarah, to handle that question.
Great. So we, as part of our master plans and other special planning projects, we prepare a publicity and communications program that goes down to the level of detail of actually writing text for the city manager's office to put on your public access cable channel. So, we think about all of the channels that are available to our younger and older residents, to people who may not be using computers but are more checked into their mobile phones, and really work with the steering committee to make sure that we are thinking of blind spots that, just because we haven't worked in Grosse Pointe Park before, we may not be aware of. So we really want to hear from you, honestly, what relationships we need to nurture and what points we have to hit. And we have a standard list of, those goals that we bring to the table. And it's not to be imprecise in answering that question, but there really is no pat answer other than we have to get into it and kind of roll up our sleeves with you guys.
Just to build on what Sarah said, it may be, we talk a lot about high tech approaches, social media and all those different approaches. But I think one of the most effective approaches that we used that Sarah used in the master plan for the city of Birmingham recently was something as simple as yard signs. We see that that's clearly a way that a lot of people communicate with each other. And so that's been a sort of low tech, highly effective approach to driving people to websites, driving people to events, and just making people aware of what's going on. So a wide variety of approaches.
Well, we have a lot of yard signs out right now here.
We'll clear the deck, it'll be the new set.
I think it would start after the election, which would probably, definitely clear all of that. You touched on parking a little bit and reviewing that. And then you also mentioned possibility of a Parks and Rec master plan. What are your thoughts on how much parking you'd be able to look at as part of this process? And is there a need to do further parking study to supplement what your current proposal outlines?
I think our approach to this was to let's see what issues rise to the top. Mm-hmm. We suspect in a mature community like Grosse Pointe Park, parking is an issue. We've talked to a number of communities about parking studies within the last several months, and quite frankly, a lot of them have pulled the plug on them just because the relationship between land uses and automobiles has changed because of the coronavirus. So you really don't get a true understanding of how the parking systems work when when a lot of people are working from home, when they're quarantined, when restaurants are at half capacity. So
right.
I'm sorry.
Was it when the time is right? When we're somewhat back to normal. So
I also would like to add to that. We see parking as kind of an accessory condition with those neighborhoods, nodes, and corridor studies, because often you don't look at parking in a neighborhood in a vacuum. I mean, we couldn't address your neighborhoods without, especially in Grosse Pointe Park, mm-hmm. without addressing on-street parking and a lot of the conflicts that are there. So I just, would kind of say that it's an important component regardless of kind of even separating it out from the rest of the planning process and studying it. But we have, experts on the team like Paul to steer us in the right direction.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman Olds, and thank you for the presentation. My question comes around to what type of analysis would you be able to do within the scope of the plan presented on our 4 retail corridors and looking at the types of businesses that we have here in the community, and if that provides the appropriate balance for our population?
Sarah, do you want to take that question too?
Yeah, so our software program, Esri, which is sort of, again, industry standard, has tapestry segmentation and also something called the business analyst. So as part of a lot of master plans that have these, really interesting, viable, but perhaps not balanced mix of businesses within them, we can pull the data and do even simple supply and demand analysis that shows kind of, a range of square footages that are missing in those corridors or over provided in those corridors. So it's, not a full-blown retail analysis or market analysis that, say, one of our frequent partners Gibbs Planning Group would produce. But at the same time, it's kind of, again, enough for you to understand what more you should study and where you should maybe focus your efforts. So when we talk about this being kind of your playbook, what we're recommending are additional studies, and we give you details on what those study inclusions could be. And then working with the Planning Commission, we prioritize.
Okay, great.
If I could ask a quick follow-up question to that, and Sarah mentioned Bob Gibbs. I know that Bob had done a market study for multiple business districts in the Grosse Pointe. How was that received by the city of Grosse Pointe Park? Is that something that you were presented with and that you're familiar with, or not?
The only thing I could answer, I've been on the Planning Commission for a year, but I am familiar that the study was done for the Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, perhaps a city manager could answer that in a little more detail.
Hi, John. Yeah, so I came on board in 2016. I believe that's when the market study was done. And there was a presentation with the Chamber of Commerce that the points were invited to.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's something that we could look at as part of our initial analysis to see what needed to be fleshed out with that, or, you know, what of that report is still relevant. So, you know, not diving right into a full-blown market study, but using what's available to leverage our effort.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin.
Thank you, and good evening to the McKenna team. My question was, given your experience working in the other Grosse Pointes from a resiliency planning point of view, are there some things that you're seeing in those communities in particular that you think should have some level of focus if you're selected as the master planner for the city of Grosse Pointe Park? And then that, you know, I'm thinking about the shoreline, you know, the health of the shoreline and some of the infrastructure, condition of the infrastructure, those kinds of things. I recognize that you brought up COVID, and that kind of fits in that box too, but just any thoughts on that?
Sure. So I'll take this one, John. So you know, I mentioned, you know, the simple act of pulling the flood zone maps and looking at FEMA data. I don't think that necessarily totally summarizes or encapsulates what is necessary here. The Michigan Association of Planning over the last 1.5 or 2 years has worked closely with researchers from Michigan Tech and the University of Michigan to bring forth best practices for master plans in Michigan to properly assess and then incorporate findings into master plans. So I went through the resiliency planning program that MET put on just last year. And it actually is a, I guess I would say, fairly simple mapping process where you identify kind of best case scenario, middle scenario, and worst case scenario. And it allows us to visualize actually places that might be vulnerable to, of course, you know, rising shorelines and lake levels. So that's definitely something that, you know, as we're really getting into the nitty gritty about the priorities for us to do more deeper dives on in the planning and data analysis, I think that's something that would be really appropriate to bring forth. And, you know, as we were preparing for the interview today, I just, you know, kind of put out there to everyone, you know, let's not forget, this is lakefront. It's so important to think about how that's going to affect you and your neighbors. So definitely top of mind, but not necessarily something that we would explore very deeply unless we thought that it was something that you wanted us to look at as part of the master plan, as opposed to, you know, having your engineering firm study it or something. So, you know, there's a lot of ways we could.
Thank you.
City Manager Seisland, have we established contact with Commissioner Fickney?
We'll try again here. Mike, can you try and speak for us? No, I see Mike, but we still can't hear his audio, Commissioner.
Good. Thank you. That concludes this round with McKenna. Could you bring in the next company, please?
We'll do that. Thank you, everyone at McKenna, Sarah and John and everybody. It was a pleasure to hear from you. Leah's going to go ahead and sign you off. See you guys later. And then we'll bring in the next group. And then Leah, I'll let you take that away once go from there.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Good night, all.
Okay, the next firm we're going to have is OHM Advisors, and Leah is going to go ahead and admit them.
Sorry, I was muted. So we have OHM Advisors joining. On their team, I have Mr. Eric Dreyer, Ms. Marguerite Novak, Mr. Patrick Droz, sorry if I say any names wrong, Mr. Justin Sprague with CIB Planning, and Mr. Aaron Domini. So I believe I have all of you in. So I am going to go ahead and ask you to unmute yourselves appropriately, and then when you are ready to share the screen, please go ahead and do so and introduce your team and go ahead. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Patrick Droz. I'm a principal with OHM Advisors, and we're going to take a few minutes tonight to go over our proposal for the City of Grosse Pointe Park Master Plan. We're very excited to be here tonight. OHM has worked with the City of Grosse Pointe for a number of years, and know that the decision to advance this master plan was one that the city thought about it and did in a very meaningful way. So the opportunity to take the steps of the master plan is something that as a firm that has a mission of advancing communities, we're very excited to be here with you to talk about how we can do that for you. As I mentioned, OHM's worked with the City of Grosse Pointe Park for a number of years. A lot of that has been with assisting with infrastructure planning. And in recent months, we've been also helping the city with planning for some of the new developments that are coming online. And in our time working with staff and the city overall, we learned a lot about the community. And what we see is a community that has a lot of very positive things going on right now. And we're very much excited to work with you to help advance that. You know, we see a community that is very generous with investments in public spaces, public buildings, your parks, your schools, your libraries, neighborhoods with architecturally significant homes that are very well cared for, and a walkable community, having diverse neighborhoods, diverse housing stock, with commercial corridors nestled right within there, to really create unique public spaces that are really not that easy to find in Southeast Michigan. So knowing that and all the positive things happening in and around the city, this is a very important time, an important step for the community to take advantage of that, that energy. We look at things happening in surrounding communities, certainly the resurgence of the Central Business District in downtown Detroit, only 15 minutes away from your community. We know this is an exciting time for Grosse Pointe Park, and we're very much excited to be here tonight. So with that, I'm going to kick it to our project manager, Aaron Dominy, who will work through the presentation.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having us. I was talking to your staff. I actually wasn't going to be able to join you because I was running a public meeting while everybody was in the weight room. Ran a public meeting with 150 people and came back and got to be here with you. So really glad to be here with you tonight to talk about this project. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about our team, kind of why this project for us, our understanding of the project. We'll briefly touch on the approach. I know you've looked through that in the proposal, and then just end with the quintessential why us. So Marguerite, can you advance the slide real quick? As we looked at putting this team together, we wanted to put a balanced team together. So I know you know Patrick. He's one of the principals at OHM. I'm also one of the partners and principals at OHM, and I'll be your project manager. I don't live in Michigan. I actually live down in Columbus, Ohio, and it used to be where that kind of would go against me. But now in this world virtually, I'm seeing teams work on things all over the country. And so I say that to say that I bring a little bit different perspective than those that you might have worked with typically within your space. Marguerite, who's on the phone, who you'll hear from in a minute, is to be the project coordinator with me, and Eric Dreyer, who's a planner with OHM, rounds out our team. And then we added CIB planning and Justin Sprague, who you'll hear from as well, on the team, because we've worked a lot with CIB over the years, and we really wanted to add one more layer to our team, especially on the economic development side and the redevelopment ready community side. We know that was mentioned in your RFP, and Justin will talk a little bit about their experience on the redevelopment ready side. So next slide, Marguerite. So I mentioned that I'm down in Columbus. So OHM has been in Southeast Michigan for 65 years. Started in Southeast Michigan and has since grown significantly over the last 15 years. And these are all of our offices now. And we're kind of actually opening up one right now in Louisville, Kentucky, as we speak. So while some of you may know the brand from years ago, we're certainly a very different firm. And we offer architecture, engineering, planning, urban design, and GIS is all part of our services in terms of what we do and how we advance communities. Next slide. So I wanted to turn it over to Justin just for a minute to talk a little bit about CIB and Justin, your background and kind of how you got to the team. Justin here.
I don't see him at his computer.
Well, I will talk for Justin. The CIB is a planning firm in Southeast Michigan. Carmine Aventini, who you may know that name from LSL Planning, started the firm, and they started this firm. It really focused more on the planning side, marketing, and economic development. And from a policy standpoint, from a branding standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and we do all those things at OHM too, but they focus on them at a much deeper level. And so we wanted to bring them to this team specifically for those pieces. And also, like I said, the redevelopment ready community side, they work as part of that program to administer the program throughout the state. And so there's nobody who knows that program better than CIB. And we know that that's something you're considering, you want to make sure you're lining up for, and you're ready for. So I think over to you, Eric. So I'm going to pass it over to both Eric and Marguerite to talk through a series of slides, and I'll jump in, but I wanted to make sure you also heard from the project team members.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Dreyer. I'm a transportation planner in our Detroit office, and I'm excited to be here. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about our project understanding. So we're really excited about this project. And we do a lot of work in Southeast Michigan, and we see Grosse Pointe Park as this thriving kind of dynamic community. It's got a unique identity, it's a great quality of life. And we see this as this opportunity to build on the success you've had over the years. The world is changing. The world has changed a lot in the last year. And we really see the opportunity through this master plan to kind of help shepherd Grosse Pointe Park into the future. There's a lot of changes that are happening, both on the economic side, land use side, and we think that some of our experience can really help with Grosse Pointe Park here. You can go to the next slide. I don't know if Justin is back. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things that we talked about as a team And as you go on this journey, master plans mean so many different things to different communities. So it's ultimately comes to what kind of tool do you want to have and how do you want to use it? And one of the pieces of the puzzle, or one way we can integrate things into the tool, is really looking at priority areas. So, having urban design, having architecture, having planning, that's one thing we really excel at. And we do work for both the public and private sector. So we understand how to look into specific priority areas, plan for them, make them market relevant, and position them within the marketplace, not only in terms of design, but also in terms of design in the market, but also in terms of placemaking. And so that's one of the pieces that we think can be a component for you as we look at your different commercial corridors, your different residential corridors, to really look at certain priority areas, dig into them, and get much more hyper-focused within the plan on those areas. Next slide, Marguerite.
So we all kind of understand and have experienced this firsthand, but e-commerce has really changed the way that we shop, we do business in our communities. What we've kind of realized over the last 5 or so years as Amazons and Walmarts and all the other online retailers have really taken a hold is that the built environment, especially the retail environment, needs to be experiential. And we see this already in Grosse Pointe Park as something that you've done a good job of. A lot of the stores, the restaurants, entertainment options, they have a good sort of character to them that people want to go and experience. But we see again, as the economy continues to change, we can develop a strategy that helps all the businesses move into the next phase of the economy.
I also think because you guys have a significant residential component, we didn't used to think of residential as a place of commerce. But we all know right now, because probably most of us on this call are working from home. So those, thinking of our home life as a work life, what happens within the home and outside those walls within the neighborhoods becomes really important because we're spending a lot more time there. So we called it the new economy 10 years ago. Now we're calling it the new economy 2.0 because everything's changed even more. And so I think for you guys, that becomes really relevant just in terms of how your land use is made up. Let's go to the next slide.
So as a transportation planner, I see this a lot. Even before COVID, we saw this changing paradigm and how the streets in our communities function and how people view them. That again was accelerated with everyone wanting to go get out of their house, walk, bike around their communities. And we think that really sort of sheds some light on the general public of how we utilize our streets. So as walking and biking has become more popular, we need to provide space for those folks, but also still provide space for vehicles, for transit, for other emerging modes. But super importantly, provide spaces for businesses to spill out onto the sidewalk and onto the public space. And we've been working a lot with communities throughout Southeast Michigan and Ohio to really modernize our streets to fit this new paradigm. We believe that a well-connected city where residents can travel safely along the corridor, they can get to their shops, they can get to their house, they can get to parks, is really the key to a healthy city, both financially and physically. This image here is from Detroit. We're working on the East Warren-Kedge Neighborhood Framework Plan. Actually, all three of us from here, Aaron, Marguerite, and I are all working on that. And we're trying to redesign East Warren so that it does work for everybody, including businesses, and it provides a connected spine through the neighborhood.
I think that's one of the layered benefits of this team, especially in the OHM side, where we're looking at everything from every angle. So you get the benefit of having planning, but we get in complex situations like this, we can also answer questions about transit, about the streetscape, about the economic impact with Justin's, being added to the team. So we're really looking at everything from every angle, 360 degrees. I just wanted to make sure we made that relevant in terms of what the graphic you see on the page.
You go to the next slide. Aaron touched on this too, but creating a sense of place is really now more than ever kind of essential for a thriving community. And we see these placemaking opportunities both on the public side and on the private side They can be tied to new infrastructure or new development. But really the idea is to kind of reference the character of the community and provide a space for people to meet, interact, engage, and connect with their fellow residents. We see the idea of social media, and social media really has taken off in the last decade. But everything on the internet and everything on your phone is really designed around a user experience. How can we take that idea of a user experience, really translate that to the way that we build our environment and build the spaces that we interact with them every day? This image here is from Oak Park, just north of Detroit. OHM did a road diet plan, design and plan. And part of that project included a pocket park that is very well utilized, it's well activated, and it serves a purpose by connecting the residential area behind to that cycle track and road diet area. So it's kind of serving a double purpose there. Next slide. And then finally, we see, Grosse Pointe's a first ring suburb. It's surrounded on all sides by other communities. And some residents in Grosse Pointe Park may need to travel to other communities for services. Folks from other communities may need to travel into Grosse Pointe Park for recreation or dining or whatever. Fostering the connections between these communities we see as a key to kind of a thriving region. And that region could be your kind of neck of Wayne County. It could be the whole of Metro Detroit. But regardless, it's a very important piece of this puzzle. And we've had some experience working with large communities and large regions on projects like this. Again, I'll bring up the city of Detroit and the East Warren plan that we're working on. A lot of that is fostering connections between neighborhoods within that study area. The image here is from Cleveland, which Aaron's team has been working on. And this is along the Cuyahoga River Valley in Metro Cleveland, and connecting a number of different communities to each other, within each other, to foster those growth opportunities. And I'll turn it over to Marguerite to talk about the process.
Thanks, Eric. So again, my name is Marguerite Novak, and I'm a planner out of our Detroit office as well. So now that we know our approach, I'll talk a little bit about our proposed work plan. So the first phase sets the tone for the project. This is where we work together to determine exactly what the city needs and wants out of their master plan and what type of master plan we're going to develop. So we'll kick off the project here, set up project communication methods, and then assemble all relevant data. The second phase is all about discovery. So we'll dive into the existing conditions analysis and really kick off the community engagement phase here as well. So this will include a community survey, all stakeholder sessions, and then the first public meeting as well. So then building off what we learned in phase 2, we'll start to develop the strategies and recommendations here. So we'll work with the steering committee to draft the plan goals and business district strategies. We'll also talk about land use here, and then any zoning recommendations that come forward as well. So then finally, pulling everything together, phase 4 will include a review of the plan and really sets forth sort of how we move forward now that we have the document drafted. So the project team will develop an implementation, funding, and accountability plan, and then conduct the final meeting here as well. And then the planning process would conclude with that final adoption hearing and process.
One thing I want to comment on this, because I think it's really important, and being one of the principals in the planning group, we take a lot of pride in, and that's really phase 1. None of our plans look the same. And every community wants to use it slightly different. And we understand in Michigan, there are certain things that needs to go into your plan. We'll make sure those are there and the process is followed. At the end of the day, you need to tell us what's important to you. So if this plan ends up being much more focused in on those priority development areas or reinvestment areas, that's where we'll spend our time. If it's on reimagining corridors, that's where we spend our time. If it's on placemaking, then that's what the plan starts to become. So that first phase of really understanding what kind of tool you want becomes extremely important, because the last thing we want to do is follow this process, go through the motions, and give you a plan that looks something like that infographic on phase 4, and you're off and on your way. That's not what we do. It's not who we are. So we really want to spend some time with you in phase 1 to understand what type of plan you want to have.
Yeah, that's a great point. So want to just take some time here and emphasize the importance of community engagement, and specifically at OHM, our experience in this new landscape of communication. So COVID's forced us to change our approach completely to public engagement. And we're now all using the same digital platforms, the same methods, but really what makes this engagement effective doesn't necessarily come down to the tools that you're using, but it's really how you're using those tools and how you're engaging. So through our experience, we've learned a few lessons that are helping us shape exactly this, how we engage, how OHM engage. So there's a difference in the way generations use technology. It's important to recognize this and know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for this. Specifically, we're seeing an increase in engagement with younger generations, and we really, really need to capitalize on this. We've also learned that the vocal minority is still present. These dynamics haven't changed. It's just more important now than ever to make sure we're providing equal and equitable access to these community conversations. And we have the opportunity now to listen more and to have these community conversations more often. So while we're able to engage large audiences now, it's still important to have that smaller group and have that focus group discussions. And then finally here, it's a consultant and city partnership. So when we talk about current and ongoing communication with the public and engagement with the public, it really is a partnership in order to make it successful. Now I will turn it over to Justin if he is back. Okay, great.
Apologize. Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Sprague with Community Image Builders, CIB Planning, and I'm really excited to be a part of this discussion tonight. One of the things that we specialize in at CIB is implementation and setting realistic implementation goals. We are and have been for the last 4 years a partner with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation with their Redevelopment Ready Communities program to do technical or to provide technical assistance and training to communities enrolled and engaged in that program. So we teach guides to the development review process. We teach zoning implementation. We teach economic development and marketing and implementation around economic development, and have worked with a number of communities across the state through that program. So one of our roles through this process with your master plan would be to ensure that all phases of the plan align with the 6 best practices through the Redevelopment Ready Communities program. Even if you are not currently engaged, or if you are, we want to ensure that as you strive for that certification through the Redevelopment Ready Communities program, that this project will set you up to be in a great position to do so.
Thanks, Justin. I think I'm going to take the last slide, just wrap us up. I really want to get to questions. It's the why us, and I just want to leave this up as we wrap up, because I think we've touched on all these points. But one is having a local team with a number of folks there just down the street, and then you also have some outside expertise from somebody like myself. Obviously, we touched on multidisciplinary. I think we have all those elements covered really well. The importance of creating community connections and our experience doing that, understanding how to create priority projects and place build with those, and then design forward thinking. We just showed you a couple of graphics quickly. I know there's a lot in your proposal that kind of showcase our design approach and kind of what comes out of that. And we definitely want to bring that to this project as well. So with that, we're going to close. We want to hear your questions, and then I want to leave this slide up to just kind of have as a backdrop as we talk.
Thank you. We'll start our questioning. I'd like to start with Commissioner Goodwin.
Thank you, and thank you to OHM for the presentation. I know that one of your strengths is on the engineering side of things, and similar to my question for the last group, what are you seeing in terms of doing master plans for more mature communities as it relates to resiliency planning? And if you've had a chance to take in Grosse Pointe Park, is there anything that jumps out at you that you think might be a part of the conversations moving forward if you're selected as the master planner?
That's a great question. I'll field the questions, and I'm going to kind of push them out to the team just to keep it super simple here. Certainly resiliency planning is front and center in every community. Whether that's from an equitable standpoint, because resiliency means so many different things, whether it's from an economic standpoint, or if it's from an infrastructure standpoint, right? Having sound infrastructure and managing your assets correctly to keep you fiscally sound. Resiliency means all of those things. And so we have the experience, across the Midwest, looking at the kind of where our offices are, where we see that in so many different ways. We see it in communities that are a little bit more like yourselves, and we see it next door, where Eric's the project manager in East Warren, right on your doorstep. So I kind of want to throw that to Eric and kind of have him respond to that too, because resiliency has been a key factor in that local conversation near you guys.
Yeah, and I know Patrick can speak to the infrastructure side a little bit more too, but we're looking at how, especially through this process, how we can set the community up for the next 100 years. You've been around for a long time. There's a lot of things that maybe underneath the surface that we want to make sure is included in this plan. And one of the strengths I think we bring is that we have this engineering expertise within OHM that we can really, I guess, connect the dots between the master plan process and the infrastructure process, and what needs to be accounted for in the infrastructure process. So we're not, putting flashy buildings or new development over stuff that is going to fail in 5 years. Patrick, do you want to talk a little bit about the infrastructure side?
I'll touch
real quick, Patrick. I just want to touch on that because, the resiliency, I think you touched on the 100 years, right? So there is the alignment between the master plan and capital improvements. But resiliency looks out through a much, much bigger lens. And there are big decisions that can be made today. And that's also why we pulled CIB in from the economic side and the implementation side to making sure we're really forward thinking, the design forward thinking is the last bullet. So sorry, I just want to add that in before you talk about the infrastructure, Pat.
Yeah, I'll try to touch very lightly on infrastructure because I think the planning aspect of the master plan is what I think we're all here to talk about tonight. But working with City Manager Seisland, we've been looking at the infrastructure because, as Eric mentioned, we're approaching 100 years for a lot of infrastructure, and that is oftentimes the end of the life cycle. So recognizing that and having a strategic plan about how you deal with that is something that every community is going through, including the city of Grosse Pointe Park. Where this becomes a benefit to this team is that we'll have that information and it becomes a pretty quick check because, Eric is only, 20 feet away from my desk. We can talk about something and just know about the age of infrastructure in a particular area and just have a background knowledge of that. So it's part of our decision making.
Yeah, and if I could really quick as well from an economic resiliency side, I've worked in a lot of communities age-wise. I guess you mentioned it as a mature city. I've done economic development work in the city of Flint. I've done economic development work in the city of Detroit. And we're currently working with the city of Hamtramck, the city of Inkster, and the city of Wayne, helping them with their economic strategies and trying to really find those properties because when you're fully built out or near fully built out, it's hard to sort of hit the redo button. So what we want to do is understand sort of what the economic strengths of the community are. What's the workforce like? What buildings or underutilized spaces provide opportunities for investment when investment is able to happen. And so we like to really highlight those assets and determine what those are up front and put those out there to investors to sort of let people know that, yes, we've been a city for a long time, but we are a great place to live, work, play, and invest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I was hoping that someone could do a bit of a deeper dive into your community engagement process.
Sure, I can start with that, and then I'll probably throw that one over to Marguerite. One thing I want to point out is while I was waiting, I did a couple of focus groups in a community meeting with 150 people, and then came back to join you guys. So it is possible to do a lot of community engagement in a very small amount of time. So, for us, obviously right now it's a digital approach. We talked about some of the lessons learned because we've been doing community engagement this way before COVID. We've been doing it during COVID, and we've been doing it in small places, places like Farmington to Detroit. And I just do the project in the city of Cleveland which is 7 miles long in downtown. So we know how to do that. We're ready and we're set to go to engage digitally in your community as well. But I think right now we're starting to find opportunities to trickle in some more traditional approaches by engaging people where they are. So if we have opportunities to set up some mobile workstations within the community, at coffee shops, at meeting places, at senior centers, so people can engage while they pass by, that's great. The more points that we can engage people, the better. So our approach is really to primarily engage digitally. We're going to rely a lot on focus groups. That's probably one of the better tools that we've found that produces really good results for people who have a vested interest in the community and ability to shape it. We'll engage at a larger scale online. We'll engage in virtual meetings. We're having great success in East Warren right now doing virtual office hours on the regular, so like every other week. And Marguerite, did I miss some things there that you wanted to touch on too?
So I think we pretty much covered it all. I guess I just want to echo the flexibility that we have. So, I mean, we all know everything is changing by the minute here, and how we engage the community is changing in those methods. But I think with kind of those easier, smaller group, kind of quick hit type engagement methods like the focus, the community office hours, or even non-digital things like we've done a lot of flyers or even yard signs, things like that. A combination between that type of engagement, but then also the larger scale, full-on community-wide digital meetings are, I think what's going to really be most successful here.
We gave you a proposal on how we thought we would approach it, but I can tell you right now, sitting here before all you guys, it's not right. Because we haven't talked to you. We don't know how your community responds. And so part of that phase one is calibrating that. And Marguerite said the key word there, which is flexibility. There are a lot of tools there that probably work in your community, but there may be some that we haven't thought of that you know about because it's your community. And we're willing to listen to that and adapt our approach. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think just to build on that, Aaron said they had the key word there, listen. One thing that we've really learned, especially through COVID, is listening to the community is one of the most important things you can do. We can't come in and say that we know how to do it, that we know best for your community. We need to listen to what people who've lived there for 50 years think, what new residents think, what young families think, what old empty nesters think, in order to get the correct view of the community. Too often planners come in and have a set agenda and want to do this, that, and the other, and things don't go well. And we've seen that in communities across the country where there's developments that nobody likes and they just are kind of bulldozed through. So listening to the community has really become kind of the central core of our engagement strategy. And the tools that we use may shift depending on how the pandemic is changing.
Great, thank you. That was my main question.
Thank you. I have a question. I notice your flow chart has an 8-month period on it. And so when you finish, you leave us a presentation that's similar to the very fine presentation you presented to us to consider you. Do you offer, or have you ever been asked to come in to a community that you've done a plan like this for on after 1 year or 3 years or 5 years and review with the administration and or the council how they're doing and what may work right or may not have worked well and present tune-ups?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the best answer to that question is actually part of that is the responsibility of the steering committee that we're going to pull together. We've had great success kind of having the committees continue on to kind of be the committee that's going to audit, maintain, and own the actual plan. And so on the semi-annual and annual basis, we see that those committees, the people that live there, work there, touch the plan on the regular basis, are the ones that are maintaining it. And yes, we do come in when asked to work with the committee to recalibrate. Change is happening so fast right now. So those calibrations are becoming more and more important. I would say in addition to that, we've actually had way more success just staying engaged. So once the plan is done, being basically available at any time to answer questions. And, you know, because we've been around so long, especially in Southeast Michigan, we have our same 5 clients that we started with 65 years ago. It's all about the relationship. And so we don't enjoy doing projects that are kind of that one and done and go away and, you know, good luck. It's not that we want to continue to do some of the projects that are in the plan. It's because the relationships matter. And so we want to be there through you every step of the way, whether that's just a phone call to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or it is a full audit. So there's all different types of levels to that. But I do think maintaining your committee and having them intact to kind of own and regularly audit this is extremely important.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Pierre.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple questions that haven't already been addressed from the previous commissioners. So your proposal, really focused on the master plan. Are there any areas that you feel that we would need to add as added services to really make this a more complete plan? Or did you feel that this was a good start in round 1, I guess?
So that's a really good question. I think it goes back to, I keep coming back to phase 1. When we first start working together, of really getting in and understanding what your project goals are. Because right now, all we know is the good work that Patrick's been doing there, what he's told us about the community, what's in the RFP, what Justin knows about the region. So we pulled all that together. We think we have a pretty good understanding, which we outlined to you. But if there are things that are missing, that's where in phase 1, we kind of calibrate and we say, you guys tell us, what we really needed was a placemaking strategy for this corridor. And so then we kind of revisit the approach and the scope, and we fine tune it a little bit, within reason. We're not going to take on 5 new projects within the project to make sure that we do those pieces for you. Because we don't have there's no one size fits all approach. This linear process that we outline can include a lot of different things and get you to the end, but we need to understand really what your priorities are, and that's going to happen early on. So I think for any of us, even those that are not farther away, but close to you, to say, we think we know you need this piece would be a misstep. That we really got to roll up the sleeves and listen first to better understand what else we should include.
Yeah, and I think our multidisciplinary team kind of plays to that. So if you decide and we get into the project and we think that commercial corridors are what you want to focus on, we have a lot of experience doing commercial corridors. I'm a transportation planner, so I can kind of lend my expertise onto some of the streetscaping pieces. But maybe you decide that your neighborhoods or other land uses or zoning is more important. We have folks who are very experienced in doing zoning plans all around Michigan and Ohio. So our expertise can really help fine tune that plan as well.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question, and looking at your timeline and the flow chart and everything you're hoping to accomplish in there, you know, with a master plan for a city of this size, is it typical for you to only have 8 months, or does that feel like a too short time frame? Because it is a lot to try and get done, certainly in 8 months.
The short answer is no, it's not too short. So I've been doing this for a little over 20 years. I've worked at other firms. I've done projects that last 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and it's too long. The quicker we can come together and get focused and develop a plan and you can start working it, the better. Anything that starts to touch 12 months and beyond, from my experience, we lose a significant amount of momentum. And honestly, we don't need that much time. You know, because we have all these pieces that come together, we can work really efficiently. And we know your time is precious too. So we're really confident that we can introduce you to a number of clients that we've done this process with in this time frame, and you can talk to them about it. But I really think it's being respectful of the committee's time, the community's time, and maintaining momentum through the process so that you have momentum coming out of it and you're ready to start working on some of the implementation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bataki?
Sorry, I was on mute. Just to sort of delve into that question, because I had the same question as well about the timeline. So which phase or phases of the process do you regard as other companies taking too long relative to how you approach things? In other words, where you're saving the time, which phases are you saving time on?
Good question. It's really the later phases. I think we all work pretty efficiently in the front third to half. It's on the back end in developing the plan and actually bringing that back to the committee. And we have a really efficient process where we go through the development of principles, goal, objective, strategy setting pretty efficiently. So I think that's where a lot of consultants will lose a lot of time. Now, one thing I do want to point out in here that's not in the process is the adoption process, or not in our process, is the adoption process that the state of Michigan requires. So we'll be done and we'll deliver the plan to you, but there's still a very, you know, you guys have a pretty long review period in Michigan. Marguerite's shaking her head because she knows what I'm talking about. But the actual delivery of the document to you guys will be done in that time frame. You'll still have a review period with the public and if they receive feedback. Right, Marguerite, you want to comment on that?
Correct. Yeah. And that's something, you know, that we typically would walk through the city with. So, you know, we would all do that together. And, you know, it just helps for an easy transition to get the plan actually adopted.
Okay. One other question that's more of a point of clarification for anyone who's reviewing the other projects that you'd worked on. So the Livonia master plan, which I believe you indicated is ongoing. The Livonia 21 plan, I believe, at least my interpretation of what's on their website, was completed in 2018. Is this a rewrite of the plan or a supplement to it?
Honestly, if it says ongoing in our project sheets, because it needs updated. So you're very diligent in your review. So yeah, we did that plan, and we did that with actually one of the folks you interviewed. So we were teamed with McKenna and did that project together. I'm sure they probably showcased that project with you. The ongoing piece is, if you might be aware that our headquarters is in Livonia. So you know, if we do maintain it as ongoing, it's because we're regularly talking with the mayor. We're working with the mayor on the implementation of the Plymouth Road priority project area. And we're also looking at working with the city to redevelop the municipal complex. So those conversations are constantly underway and ongoing.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Denner.
Thank you. I just had one question related to your engagement and interface with the city. Do you see a role for interfacing with or leveraging existing resident populated city boards and commissions? For example, Recreation Commission, Beautification Commission, our DDA, and our TIFA boards.
Great question. I'm going to point to what I just did today with the community down here in Upper Arlington as part of that process. And that's for just a community center. It's not even for their master plans for building a community center. We have 7 different focus groups made up of the groups that you just talked about, and we engage them twice during the process. So that's really task 2.3. That's outlined in our project where we would engage them specifically. We do that because we don't want their voices lost within the public stream. I've seen that happen multiple times, and quite honestly, sometimes those groups feel disrespected or they feel like their voice doesn't count because it falls within the context of 300, 400, 500 other comments. And so those kind of very intimate conversations that we can have with those groups you just pointed out are part of the process.
Yeah, it's a good way to really understand those specifics of the community as well. So if you're talking about the Parks Board, you know, what can we learn from the folks who understand that and sort of understand the background of it and live it on a daily basis to inform our plan?
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. City Manager Seisland, could we move to the next presenting?
Thank you. I do want to try, though. I think we might have solved Mr. Commissioner Fickeney's trouble. So I want to see, Mike, can you speak for us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. I've been listening to the whole thing, but I just, I've been having difficulties with the mute, so I do apologize, but I'm here. I'm here.
So you've heard everything.
Do you have any questions for OHM?
No, not right now. I like to talk to when there's to get on discussing the infrastructure. That's what I think is one of the most important things right now at the age that we're at. So I like the fact that they touched on that, and I understand. If I'm not mistaken, they're already doing some work. We're engaged with the park with us on infrastructure. So that was good to hear. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. City Manager Seisland.
Thank you, Chairman Olds, Patrick, Marguerite, everybody, Eric, pleasure. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good night.
All right, Leah, can we, I know we'll go through a little tech to admit Beckett and Rader to the meeting. And this will be our last presentation.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Seisland. So I'm going to be admitting Miss Michelle Bennett and Miss Leah DeMolkier. I'm hoping that she didn't hear me say that last name, so I'm sure that she'll say it correctly. And thank you, ladies, for being so patient with us. I'm just going to go ahead and ask you to either unmute yourselves or, Michelle, I believe you're already unmuted. If you would like to go ahead and share your screen and introduce yourselves and your firm, we are very excited to see your presentation, and you are the final one. So please take it away. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. We are very excited to be here also. You guys are troopers making it through all these presentations. So we recognize we're bringing up the rear. We are going to make this short and peppy for you and get out about our evening. So thank you. So first slide, please, Michelle. My name is Leah DeMichelle, and I have with me Michelle Bennett. We are representing Beckett and Rader Incorporated. Our firm is based in Ann Arbor. We also have offices in Petoskey and Traverse City. We've been making great places since 1966. The team you see before you, our planners, have some diverse professional backgrounds representing everything from journalism to graphic design to economics to spatial analysis. We're also a multidisciplinary firm, And we're firmly integrated with our landscape architect and engineering partners. So we bring sort of a wide variety of skills to the table to address the broad subject of master planning. I'm going to introduce our team on this slide. So as I said, I'm Leah Dumichel. I'll be the principal in charge. Michelle Bennett here will be your primary contact and project lead. We also have with us, on the slide, Liz Gundon and Rowan Brady, who is our GIS specialist. Okay, now next slide, sorry.
Sorry about that.
We also would like to just point out briefly that we are a little bit of, although we have diverse backgrounds, we're a little bit of master planning specialists in the planning department. So we take it as a point of pride that we've won more master plan Daniel Burnham awards for comprehensive plan than any other firm in the state. And we think that's important because it really speaks to our intense and concentrated focus on really addressing each community's unique issues and providing customized and unique solutions. So without any further ado, I will let Michelle get started in telling you how we are going to apply that to Grosse Pointe Park.
Yes, thanks, Leah. Okay, good evening, everyone. As you can see on this slide, there are 4 main criteria here, 3 of which come from the 2012 master plan. So we thought we'd use this as our organizing principle, but we added an extra one there, reflective, which I'll talk a little bit more about. As you can see, our proposal is outlined using these 4, and reflective is really, as consultants, we see that we're bringing expertise to the community, but we want to make sure at every step that we are reflecting back to you an accurate history, and that we are making sure that what we propose aligns with your values. So the ways that we can do that, there we go, is we start with plan analysis. So you have a history of planning, and so what we want to do is build off of that. We don't want to duplicate any of the good work that's already been done. So in that process, as we're going through your planning documents, learning about your history, your relationships with other agencies and organizations, then we get a good understanding of the planning context. And another way that we can do that that we've been doing lately and finding very successful is going on a community tour with staff or with a commissioner or anyone who wants to take us around and show us where there are problem areas, where there are areas for transition, where there are areas that you are really proud of, so that we can visit them, document them, see them for ourselves, and really do what is our role as a consultant, is maybe point out things that you guys haven't been able to see because you live or work in the community. With that information, we can create something similar to this map you see here. So this is obviously another community, but it allows us to think spatially about areas in your community and what they should be designated for. So you can see here, we have a corridor, a business corridor. So this is somewhere where we could tie in your 4 different business areas that were highlighted in your last master plan. We can designate areas that are prime for growth, redevelopment, centers of employment, and maybe neighborhoods that we don't necessarily want to touch. This is also a good chance to get caught up on the people and land use planning that that takes place in your city. We saw from your last master plan, you're up to date with the 2010 decennial census. It's been a very eventful decade, so we think 2020 is probably a good time to update that and look and see what trends have changed. That will influence a lot of the work that we do and even this map itself. Okay, I'm trying to click here on the next, there we go. We also really firmly believe in the power of community engagement, and that your plan is only as good as it is representative of the people you're writing for. So we have a few things here that would be done on a regular basis. So you can see the steering committee meeting. That is something we would select at our initial kickoff meeting. We want 6 to 10 people that are highly representative of the city, or either by training in their professional background, in their age, in socioeconomic status. We want to make sure that there are people there that have a lot of insight and opinions at these meetings to help us. We see this as another way of us being reflective of you guys being our sounding board as we go through all the research and meet with you on a monthly basis. We also want to create a website so that there's one place everyone can go and find the information they want. Everyone has equal access to that. Community surveys. Generally, these are done online. We can offer physical copies if there's people that don't feel comfortable using the online platform. But this is a really good time to ask those questions that are really hard to get from people. So we have the census, we have Esria, we have all this data we can collect, but people's personal preferences, their behavior, what they want to see in the future is not something that we can capture from a database. So we want to go out and ask people for that. Visioning, a crucial point of master planning. This we want to be done among stakeholders, so city council, planning commission, DDA, a lot of decision makers to get them together in the same room. And then the story map is our probably most exciting one, a newer one that we have been playing around with, but this is really a highlight of the master plan. So this comes towards the end of the process where we can show the community, we've heard what you've said, we've incorporated, here's a fun, easy way for you to review the work we've done. We can at this point still ask very targeted questions, but most of the work will have been done, and this is really us showcasing that in a fun way for the community. Okay, these topics here are really the crux of the master plan, and this is where we get to use our imaginations in terms of what data we're looking for, how we're going to find it, how we're going to put it all together. And so I want to touch on these all very briefly. But your business areas, for one, we know that those are near and dear to your heart. You have 4 of them, and so learning what demand is going unmet is going to be crucial to this. So there are online sources, proprietary software where we can figure out how people are spending their money. But a lot of consultants have access to that data. I think what we would do as the next step is we really want to match those to the building stock that you have and compile that with other aesthetics information about those corridors to see how can we match what makes people want to visit these places with the things that they want to see there. When we talk about neighborhoods, we have read that there is a decline in your family formation age cohorts. The more and more master plans we write, we see that the lack of housing diversity is really the culprit for a lot of these cohorts leaving. So we want to really attack that topic and spend some good time there talking about what is a starter home in your community, what price range would it fall in, what would it look at, what would it look like, what does it look like for all of our different age groups so we can accommodate all of them. Services and infrastructure, we noticed that those weren't really touched on in the last plan, so there's a lot of room to do some analysis here. And if we are going to be talking about infill development, we really need to make sure that we have the right infrastructure there for it. Otherwise, that recommendation isn't going to get you very far. So we want to take a look at, your main water, sewer, stormwater. Are those there for the new developments we're looking for? Circulation is another big one with thoroughfares. We saw that you have done some work on that. I think there's a little bit more room here to talk about network planning. Where are there gaps in the system? Where can it be improved? And especially now, this is a super exciting time that traffic counts are down. Is this the time to perform road diets? Complete streets is a topic we all understand very well, but we know implementing them is really hard. So I think now is probably the time to have those discussions. And then future land use, again, I think another important component to add on to your last master plan is that it's going to have to be done through redevelopment in a city that's already built out. And if we're going to be talking about what future land uses are, we need to talk about the intensity of those uses again, so we can align that holistically with everything else we've been talking about. Infrastructure, what kind of roads go there, what kind of neighborhoods do we want to have? Okay. So lastly, we're going to put all of these things together. When we have community engagement results, when we have all of our analysis done, we want to create an action plan that aligns with redevelopment ready communities, whether you are engaged or not. These are best practices, and we are one of the 3 state firms that has been paid or has a contract with the state to perform RRC services. So we deal with these criteria, these best practices all the time, and have extensive experience with them. And so we want to make sure that our action plans are helping you towards certification, that your action plans are feasible, that there's political will for them, that there's professional capacity to perform them when we leave, that we're not leaving you with something that's completely unattainable. So I just want to leave you guys here with why we think you should choose Beckett and Rader. We have a very good reputation and long history of building beautiful places in Michigan. Some of the highlights, if you've been to Marquette or Petoskey, if you've been to Jackson recently or Dexter, we've really helped transform those places. We do everything with a resiliency lens. So even if we don't have a separate chapter dedicated to resiliency, this is how we approach planning because it is holistic and best practices. Leah touched on the fact that we are an award-winning firm, which we're proud of, mainly because it shows that we listen to our clients and we exceed their expectations. As RRC planners, we work at every scale, but we can go as specific as a site, all the way up to some of the largest cities in Michigan. Our knack for telling the whole story really starts with Leah, who was a journalist in her first career. And as someone who reviews all my work, she makes sure that we are asking all the right questions and getting everyone's input. Spatial analysis, tremendously important because we don't want to just tell you what you guys could be doing, but we want to pinpoint where, because that's always the next question anyways. So we would like to hit that from the very beginning. And I will end on the fact that we are very proud to be a female-led team, which is rare in planning, and I think brings a different perspective that is needed in this realm. So with that, that's the end of our presentation. I hope I got through it in my 10 to 15 minutes, and we welcome any questions about our firm or about the project.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we have questions. We'll start again in reverse order. Mayor Denner.
Okay. The engagement portion of your approach, I'm wondering if you have considered the need or advantage or if you would see it as important or not important to interface with or leverage existing resident staff groups that exist within the city, like the Recreation Commission, the Beautification Commission, our DDA board, and our TIFA board.
Yes, absolutely. So all of those boards would be, so we envision this visioning session to have as broad a representation across the community as possible. So we would like each of those boards to be represented as many as possible. In addition to that, as we write chapters, we almost always find ourselves reaching out to the various components and staffs and boards and commissions and groups in the community. So as each chapter comes up, which I'm sure Michelle can add to this because it's almost always her who's making the calls, we try to make sure that we have touched upon and reached out to and heard directly from and sometimes solicited, draft feedback from every relevant member of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there is a lot of work that's already been done that you guys send to us, then we can usually take it from there. But if not, and even sometimes in addition to, once we've written something, we run it past commissions first to see what they have to say, if they have any modifications. Nothing that we do really goes unchecked by like the appropriate commissions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bataki.
Just a question, if I could get maybe a little more detail about some of the the outreach, specifically the visioning and the open house pieces of it, how much of that would you envision would be led by the steering committee versus yourselves, and how much of that would be actual accessible and open to the public residents at large?
Well, I would say that generally the relationship between us and the community when it comes to community engagement is we would love for the steering committee's feedback, and we really look to them to sort of push through their established channels to promote the events, right? I think it's much more effective when it comes from you all than from two people that the community doesn't know as well. But we definitely come up with the content and the structure. Usually that, again, will go through you all first for your approval. And then we would host the event, and we generally facilitate that whole thing, but would love to have steering committee members join in on that. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. And,
okay.
And I saw in your proposal, you actually itemized, hours, which as a finance person, I really like.
Great.
So, with respect to the visioning and the open house and the number of hours that you've listed, that would include your team's presence at the events as well.
It would include our team's presence at the events, although, so this was written back in July, and we were in the middle of a big surge, and nothing had opened up back then. So there's a little note in there that says that by and large, we've constructed this to be remote. The visioning session is an exception, but even that, depending on when it happens, what's going on at the time, that can be shifted to an online format also. So there's really a significant cost savings in conducting business this way, which was certainly nobody's intent. It's just where we're at, but that's how it's turned out.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Pierre.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. You touched on this a bit about, now might be the time to look at a road diet, for example, and different things as a result of potential changing patterns due to COVID. And I'm just wondering, have you seen some of your clients looking at that already, and maybe master plan process that you have in place right now, having to make some changes or incorporating things that they wouldn't have even thought of 6 months ago?
I haven't seen it in this last 6 months. I mean, we had clients, our landscape architects do streetscaping and road diets long before COVID, but as of, this week is also the MAP conference. And so I've been attending, and transportation planners have been talking about the fact that this is an opportune time because they have the exact numbers of how much the traffic counts have fallen. And so we were all talking about that as a group. But in the last 6 months, I don't, Leah, do you have a specific example of?
I do. Well, I have one. I will say that, we're all sort of like learning at the same time. And honestly, the last 6 months has been a lot of learning how to use Zoom and not so much trying to, plan for the future. But some processes that were ongoing, and one example that I've recently sort of had a detailed conversation about is about office designations, right? So even before COVID, that seemed to me like a very restrictive zoning category that maybe could be transitioned into broader commercial uses, and it seemed a bit, just a bit single use. Well, that conversation really has intensified through the course of COVID, and has kind of added some weight to the argument that perhaps our future land use should not insist upon that very narrow use. So while the whole direction of the plan didn't change, that particular aspect of it has taken a turn.
Oh, it's interesting. And who knows, right? what's gonna even happen? But it's interesting to see what it could, what the results, I guess, could be. Right. We're very specific in your response here and focusing on obviously what was in the RFP and getting the master plan. Are there any areas that you feel we would be beneficial to do additional studies on or additional planning to as complementary to the meat and potatoes master plan?
Well, yeah, I'll take that because I forgot to mention this during the presentation. So thank you for asking that. We do have a history of working on master plans simultaneously with park and recreation plans because there are several sections that overlap. So it's actually quite a deal for communities to do them at once. And I believe, are you guys due for one coming up? Has yours expired? Or? Yeah. So this could be another good time to attach that because the grants that are available for that, we also have helped with that and can have a history of getting people quite a bit of grant money at the completion of that plan. So that is another good opportunity.
I also reviewed your most recent TIFA plan and noticed that there were some plans for streetscaping in the future in there. And our landscape architect partners really have been able to work closely with us in designing streetscapes that achieve both land use and planning aims, as well as the beautification and other aims that you would improving functionality, circulation, those kinds of design realm considerations in a streetscape.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you.
I have a question relative to your time frame flow chart.
Yes.
It indicates meetings in, I guess, yellow. And there are 3 dots on most of them. Is that a single meeting?
Yes, I think so. The dots are mostly decorative. Sorry.
Well, and if I took that, are there, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings where you'll be on site? Am I understanding that correctly?
I don't think so. Let me flip through here. Okay, so so the kickoff meeting and the steering committee meetings we had envisioned to be conducted remotely. The visioning session we had anticipated to be in person, but as I said, can pivot. And then the story map open house presentation, the story map open house, the presentation, and the final public hearing presentation. Well, the public hearing is on site, likely, unless we are still doing Zoom at the time. But those all have, they are envisioned to be delivered online, as we all are at this time, but they can be converted. And if you prefer us on site for any of those, we can certainly discuss that.
Well, could you tell me then, how many on-site meetings do you anticipate with this program?
I believe 2. So the community tour, which we would absolutely need to be on site for, and the visioning session.
In the visioning session, okay. Yes. And the rest of the time you're working through the steering committee?
Yes.
And most of your work with the steering committee is a remote consultations?
That is how it's presented. And of course, we are flexible in converting that.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how you would kind of target in on those redevelopment areas. As you said, we've got 4 very distinct business corridors. I'm a small business owner, so I'm glad to hear you're talking about these, new interpretation or creative land use zoning, because I work from home, as many of us do right now. But if you could just touch upon, a little bit more about how you would, evaluate our retail and office, not only the physical space, but do we have the right blend of retail establishments and the correct I guess, delivery of services, whether it be, you know, a dentist's office, a medical office, financial planners, etc. You could just kind of talk a little bit more about how you would evaluate that, because we are a unique community where, you know, we're bordered with water on one side and our other 3 sides we're pretty landlocked in. So we're serving primarily our residents, but, you know, is there anything we can do to make Grosse Pointe Park a destination for others?
Well, I think that it will start with market data, and we can match that also with asking questions in the survey, right? So we can get an idea of how often people are using certain services and buying certain goods, and how far they have to travel to get those, and would they like to see them in the community. We like to match that with data that's been collected, so people can say one thing, but where their dollars go is another thing. So we want to see if those two align. And then generally we have a pretty good idea of the kind of square footage and amenities that those land uses need. So that's when we would check with your building stock as well. So, you know, if it came back that the community, you know, wanted, this is a very obvious example that might not apply, but just hypothetically, if they wanted a Walmart, right? If you don't have a lot that's 50,000 square feet, then that's not going to be something we're going to pursue, right? So it's just trying to align the two.
I take your point about, you know, looking outside the community, you know, in terms of a destination. And so we do have some data that approaches that also. So Esri Business Analyst allows us to draw, you know, drive time radii and to look at the expenditures within that, as well as, you know, sort of the leakages, you know, the dollars that within that area are being captured and those that aren't. And that is by sector. Now we find that data always needs to be vetted by the community. You know, it's at a higher level view, and it is collected by people who don't know us, but it provides an excellent starting point, and really sort of helps to provide you know, a supported window into those questions. And then another option is that when we design the community survey, we have designed a sort of very short companion survey that's designed to be accessed by a smartphone and just by maybe a QR code that's stuck in a storefront window. And that's accessible to anybody who is already a user of the community but may not live here. So if we are, you know, using certain channels to target residents, then this is a way to capture those users of our business districts who may not also be residents.
Great, thank you. I have one other question. You had talked about perhaps doing a companion Parks and Recreation master plan, and I think this city manager can help to answer this question, but I don't believe that we have a Parks and Recreation master plan. So that would be something certainly worthwhile in exploring and developing. And how would you incorporate that into the community engagement process? Would you try and run some of those sessions perhaps concurrently? Would you focus on the overall master plan first and then the Parks and Rec plan?
Well, I think with that in mind, when we conducted the general survey, right, we don't want to exhaust folks with surveys. So if we know that we're going to ask questions about both subjects, then we'd like to do it just once. So we'd like to take the survey questions that are, you know, most appropriate and build them in when we do that. But there are also some kind of park specific questions that we often have better luck going directly to park users for. So similar to the kind of breakout survey that is that the outreach is done through the stores, that we can also, you know, install a similar methodology, but in the parks on a sign and ask sort of, you know, specific questions of park users who often certainly have the most to say and also the most, you know, sort of detailed knowledge of what we're working with.
Mm-hmm. I'll say that the timeline with Park and Rec plans is very specific because it goes through the MDNR, and so there's a deadline that you have to submit it to the state, which is February 1st. So we're usually doing our inventory of the parks in the summer so we can get the best photos, and that's when they're the most full. And so that's another opportunity if we're allowed to at that point interact with other people face to face. We have in the past, as we're doing inventory, we can bring iPads with us and we can talk to park users that way as well.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin.
I have no questions. My questions about resiliency planning, I think, were adequately addressed between the proposal and the presentation. So thank you very much to Beckett Rader team.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Fickeny.
Yes, I'd just like to compliment the ladies on a wonderful presentation and very informative. I did want to ask, though, how many of you or people in your firm are familiar with the east side here of not just Grosse Pointe? Have you had any projects this side of the downtown area, even go on to Macomb County? I mean, I'm looking at all these destinations where you've been, and there's nothing like around here. How do you get a feel for the community here?
Well, we do actually have a team member who grew up in, I believe he said, St. Clair Shores. And so I consulted a great deal with him when I was writing the proposal. So we have an insider on staff. We also, we've worked on the community master plan in the city of Warren, which is Macomb County. I just saw a partner was compiling some experience in St. Clair, I think in all of St. Clair County, for another proposal, and that was a bit of a list. So we do, we've been around for 50 years. We do have experience along the shoreline there.
Yeah, well, we have a very unique community, and we're all very proud of it. I like your presentation, and I think we'd be looking forward to meeting with you more. But thank you very much, and I apologize if you were online for my technical difficulties I was having earlier. Anyway, thank you for being on here with us this evening.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner, City Manager Seisland, could you close out the presenters, and we will move on to our next agenda item?
Yes, Chairman Olds. Leah and Michelle, thank you so much for your presenting to us today, and I'm going to have Leah exit you out, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity. You have a great night.
Good.
We're going to, over the next 10 minutes, I'd like you to take some time, and I'd like you to rank order the 4 presentations that we've received. And by rank order, I mean from favorable to least favorable. Your most favorable would be a 4 point, and down through 3 to least favorable 1 point. Please rank all of them. We will go through after a short 10-minute break here, where you have some time to consider what you've heard, consider how you want to do the rankings. The city manager will call the roll, and you can start with me, city manager, and we will all give our rank order, and we will look at total scores for the presentations that we've received. So let's reconvene in about 10 minutes or so. It's basically 10 o'clock right now. So at 10:10, let's regather and have the next part of our discussion. Is everybody here now?
Here's Stephanie.
Yep.
Ampere, Pataki, Denner?
Yeah, I'm here.
Present and accounted for? Okay.
Yep.
City Manager Seisland, you have the chart ready to go?
I do. I'm ready for your scores.
Okay, here we go. I have a 4 for OHM Advisors, a 3 for McKenna, a 2 for
Okay.
Beck Raider, and a 1 for MKSK. Now we can move
Okay.
on to the rest of the membership.
Okay, Commissioner Goodwin.
I have a 4 for McKenna. I have 3 for OHM, 2 for MKSK, and a 1 for Beckett and Rader.
Thank you. Commissioner Vitaki.
4 for MKSK, 3 for OHM, 2 for McKenna, 1 for Beckett and Rader.
Thank you. Commissioner Sampier.
I have a 4 for MKSK, 3 for OHM, 2 for Beckett and Rader, and a 1 for McKenna.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay.
I need to unmute. Am I unmuted? Sorry.
You're good now. Yep.
Sorry about that. My AirPods died. I have a 4 for MKSK, a 3 for Beckett and Reader, a 2 for McKenna, and a 1 for OHM.
Thank you. Commissioner Fickney.
I have a 3 for McKenna. I have a 4 for MKSK. I have a 3 for OHM and a 2 for Beckett Rader.
Okay. Oh, Commissioner Fickney, I need a 1. I've got 2 3s. I have
1.
OHM and McKenna both as a 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did the 3.
You're good.
Well, the 1 would be then OHM.
Okay. Mayor Denner.
I have a 4 for McKenna, a 3 for Beckett and Rader, a 2 for MKSK, and a 1 for OHM.
Okay. All right, let me do some totals here. Give me 1 second.
This was difficult. I thought we had 4 really good presentations and firms to choose from.
It'd be nice to take a piece out of every one of them. You know.
It would be hard to come up with an answer that won't serve the city well.
Okay. Down the line, in last place, I have Beckett and Rader with 14. Second to last place, OHM Advisors with 16. Third place, McKenna with 19. And MKSK with 21.
Okay, there's no runoff needed. With that, I would move the selection of MKSK as the Grosse Pointe Park Master Planning Consultant.
I'll support.
I'll second the motion.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Sampier,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitaki,
Yes.
Commissioner Olds,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay,
Yes.
Commissioner Fickney,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes the vote of MKSK. Commissioner Olds, we do not, we're at the public comment non-agenda portion. I do not have any written public comment, but I will ask Leah if we have any verbal public comment in the queue. Leah?
Thank you, City Manager Seisland. Before we actually go to the public comment queue, we skipped over new and old business, and I don't know if any of the commissioners have anything for that. Thank you.
Let's ask if there is any new or old business that the commissioners care to raise.
Chairman Olds, the only thing I would like to add is I'd like to thank City Manager Seisland and Assistant City Manager Smith. I know you guys put in a tremendous amount of time and effort on vetting these master plan proposals, and the whole staff at City Hall. So I just want to say thank you. I know that this has been a time-consuming process, and I think the whole commission really appreciates the time and effort you put into this.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the public comment.
Okay. Leah, do we have anyone in public comment?
Yes, City Manager. I currently have one person in the queue for public comment. So I'm going to share the 3-minute timer, and I'm going to reset it. And then, Brian, you are first. If you can please just restate your name and your city of residency for the record. Go ahead, please.
Brian Bosberg, resident of Grosse Pointe Park. And just wanted to thank the commission and the staff for a really great deliberative process tonight, for listening. It's very apparent that everyone listened to the presentations, asked very good in-depth questions. Thank you to the staff for being prepared tonight with a nice format for this. And I think you have selected an outstanding planning firm. So I look forward to this hopefully being approved by council, and look forward to this master planning process getting underway.
Thank you. Leah, do we have any other public comment?
City Manager Seisland, I have no further public comment in the queue at this time.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll support.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Olds?
Yes.
Commissioner Fickney?
Yes.
Commissioner Goodwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay?
Yes.
Commissioner Samper?
Yes.
Commissioner Vitaki?
Yes.
And Mayor Denner.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Good night.